welcome to the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. Today is February 28th, 2018. Can we please stand and pledge allegiance to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? All in favor? Can I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Second. All in favor? We have one item that's pulled from the consent agenda, and that's a treadmill for Blue Mountain Middle School that was generously donated. So thank the person who donated the treadmill for their fitness center. Yes, can I please have a motion to approve the donation?
Second.
Second, all in favor? We have a audience comments. If any of you would like to come forward and say something, please go to the podium and give and give your name, please.
Hello, I'm Suzanne Mackey. I live in Buchanan. I'm a taxpayer here. And I would like to bring something to the attention of the board that I'm not sure they're aware of. There is a in our district who has had a second positive drug test in 2 years, who is being allowed to resign with his benefits in lieu of being fired. My husband, a former custodian in this district, was fired without the right to resign with his benefits while home recovering from open heart surgery because he referred to someone by their nationality in a private text to someone he thought to be a friend. Both men in question had a last chance agreement in effect, and my question is, why the double standard? Why someone who has 2 dirty drug tests is allowed this benefit and my husband is denied this benefit? And as a taxpayer, I'd like to know why this person in question is still working at the district till the end of the month and driving district vehicles. This is what I would like to know. Now, I've also been told, because you're probably surprised, that this person in question is resigning because of the pressures of his job. And if you check with Partners in Safety, and perhaps in his file, you'll see that's not true, because it's a second dirty drug test being swept under the rug.
Well, first of all, I can say we're not allowed to discuss personnel issues privately, but Mr. Hochreiter can discuss that.
Yeah, New York state law doesn't allow us to discuss any personnel matters publicly.
That's fine. I'm not looking for you to discuss that individual. I've already said what I know. Okay? My question to all of you is, why the double standard? Why is one person with last chance agreement allowed to resign with benefits while another is not, for simply referring to someone by their nationality? There was no derogatory slang terms used. This was a witch hunt. And again, as a taxpayer in this district, this is not acceptable. A second dirty drug test is immediate termination, in my understanding.
Last chance agreements in any negotiated settlement with any member of any employee, whether they're a member of a union or not, is not for public fodder. Those aren't discussions we can have. Those are protected discussions between the district, attorneys who are involved, and the particular employees.
That's fine. But again, my question is, why the double standard? You don't have to answer any other question other than why the double standard and who's responsible.
I can't answer that question. Those are subject to negotiations and subject to...
Well, I think maybe the taxpayers would like to know.
I want to know. Can we ask
I can't answer that question.
It doesn't matter if anybody wants to know. And I know how you feel, but we are prohibited from talking
They're
about
legally bound, and I
anything
understand that.
publicly.
That's fine, but you can't expect me as a taxpayer or anyone to allow 2 dirty drug tests to be swept under the rug.
Absolutely not. But again, we can't, I am so sorry, but we
Okay,
can't.
well then I ask that you look into it, you take care of it. And
We can definitely look into things, but, you know, again, we can't discuss anything publicly. It becomes very frustrating to a lot of people, but that's New York State law. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Well, you need to take a second look at your administrators, because I don't know if they're keeping it from you or if you're a part of it, but this is what's going on. Thank you.
Sue.
Kimberly Ryan.
You have to come up to the podium, please.
Quick thing.
Thank you.
Kimberly Ryan, obviously I have kids in the district. I'm here for another matter, which is the cover-up of what I think is some really bad behavior by students from either out of school or in school, where the police get involved and the parents don't know and the parents can't go forward with charges. But that's another issue. We'll bring that up later. I'll have my friend talk about that. But I want to know what this gentleman's driving, because this is the first I'm hearing about it, and my kids go on the bus every day. What is he driving? Can you tell us that? Shouldn't we know that? Shouldn't you know that? 2 drug tests positive and we don't know what he's driving? That's a problem.
We can't discuss these matters. They're protected under.
Okay, you said that already. I got that. But can you tell us tonight if this person will not be driving tomorrow morning? Can we get that from the board? Can you pass a resolution that this man will not be in one of our transportation?
It's our understanding the gentleman does not drive any buses with children.
Does he drive any of our, because I'm a taxpayer, so if he gets into an accident and you guys know that he has 2 drug tests, that's a great lawsuit against my school. So he shouldn't be driving anything.
Michelle Pasolino, I have 2 children in the school. Before I read what I'm about to read, the double standard, as I've been speaking to people, more stories have been coming out, and to the exact same, to this actual topic, there was a teacher who was allowed to retire who actually hit my son when he was in middle school. There was a police report and everything filed on it. Apparently he was in the high school. He hit children in the high school, and it was brought to people's attention, and he was moved to the middle school so that he could work with younger children. That's where my son was when he was hit. They didn't question the children that were in the room that came forward. He was allowed to work there for another whole year and retire with his benefits. So, and the administrators do know about that. So I don't know if the board doesn't know about that, but the administrators do know about that. So,
Well, yes, you spoke with me.
on January 11th, Hendrick Hudson played Valhalla in basketball. The game was intense, and an argument erupted at the end in which the JV teams had words and pushing was involved. That evening, a text message went out from a Valhalla basketball player to a student at Penn Hud, and it went viral in our school community. I'm going to apologize for what I'm going to read right now. It's not my words. This message was about my son, and it read, "Tell him he's a from the whole Valhalla basketball team, and we him up at any time. He should watch his back because us strapped. I don't need to fight him. I will kill him, end his life. I have a semi-auto in my house. It's over for him." I received a phone call the morning of January 12th from our assistant principal. He read this message to me and stated the school was still looking into the matter. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do, so I went to the school to contact the police. When I arrived at the school, I was told to wait. The assistant principal's secretary told me that they know I was here, but the administration was too busy and that she was going to make an appointment for me to come back next week. I lost it. The school called for Mr. Mackin, who was able to help calm me down. He also convinced me not to call 911 from the school and that I should go to the police station on my own to make a complaint. I was still very upset and not thinking clearly, so I did what Mr. Mackin instructed. That same evening, Mr. Mackin and Mr. Baker called me and read an apology letter from the Valhalla student. They thought this would help me to feel better. They were wrong. I received a phone call on Monday from a fellow parent asking me about the threat and if it was true. I confirmed it was. She was shocked because her daughter was scheduled to play basketball against Valhalla the next day, and she did not feel safe. This parent called Mr. Sherman to ask what plans they had to ensure the safety of the girls' game. Mr. Sherman knew nothing about the hostile environment of the game or the threat that was made afterwards. He was walking into a potentially dangerous situation blind. The game was thankfully called off due to the weather. His father called Mr. Hochreiter's office several times to schedule a meeting and discuss this situation. His calls were not returned. Therefore, my ex-husband approached the superintendent during the next home game and asked Mr. Hochreiter if he had a minute to talk. Mr. Hochreiter replied, "No, I don't." His father replied, "You need to make some time for me." When Mr. Hochreiter replied, "I received your calls. My office will be calling you tomorrow to make an appointment." On Monday, January 22nd, 9 days after the threat against my son's life was made, my ex-husband and I, along with my cousin, who works for the Board of Ed as crisis management, met with the superintendent to discuss this incident. The goal of the meeting was to review what the district's policies and protocols were in terms of how parents are informed of situations like this, how does the school investigate or report a situation like this, how is a threat like this communicated to the school staff, how are teachers and staff trained to report situations like this to the administration, how does the school work with local law enforcement to address a situation like this, how are students who are victims supporting through an incident like this. Neither one of my children were once asked how they were doing, how their feelings were. Never was called into an office, never was spoken to by anyone. And last but not least, how is the urgency of response for a situation like this determined? At the end of our meeting, Mr. Hochreiter assured us that our concerns would be addressed and that he would call us soon with answers to these questions. Here we are now, 37 days later, 2 weeks to the day after the Parkland tragedy, and I'm still waiting for that phone call.
I can respond by saying I've been in...
Dad, you could kill them. This is what I was handed.
Mrs. Fasolino, I can respond to you by saying I had been in regular communication with Mr. Mackin and Mr. Baker as soon as the event took place. I had shared that with you and your ex-husband. The timeline in terms of when we ended up meeting with regards to your request, we can go back. Roseanne took those calls and timestamps them. When I did have a conversation with your ex-husband, it was at the basketball game, I forget which one, and I was going from the basketball game to one of our concerts, band concert perhaps. He did ask me if I had a minute. I did stop. He told me what Mr. Fasolino told me what the topic was, and I confirmed that I knew that I had been in conversations with Mr. Mackin and Mr. Baker, and that the meeting, from what I understand, was set up for the following day. It wasn't that we will get back to you. The meeting had already been scheduled, and I believe I had said that to Mr. Fasolino.
Is it scheduled? Is the meeting scheduled? It's not meeting scheduled.
The meeting scheduled with the two of you and myself was already committed for the following day when Mr. Fasolino and I talked in the back.
How did you commit it? You didn't commit it with us.
No, I
You
told you that day that I would get in touch with you. That's what I told you, and we met.
And we met the next day. From what I don't have my calendar in front of me in the
It
notes.
wasn't the next day. You were at the basketball game. I ran out to come after to talk to you for a minute, and I said, excuse me, Mr. H, do you have a minute? You said, you actually said, I'm running out, but sure. And you turned around and I talked to you,
Yep.
and you said that you heard about,
Yep.
the situation. Can you please call my secretary and schedule a meeting with me? And I called up your secretary and we scheduled that meeting for a couple of days after. It wasn't the next day, it was a couple of days after. That's exactly what
Okay.
happened.
Well,
Right.
okay. The issue where it stands, Mrs. Fasolino, is I did have follow-up conversations with Mr. Baker and Mr. Mackin and other staff that are responsible for those matters. Your friend, I don't know if she's related or not, did offer some services to work
I'm
with
here.
us. Whether
This is what we're still stands.
I'm sorry, there you are.
And I gave you my number.
I've
No
got
one
it all.
reached out.
I've got it all in terms of our processes and protocols, and we followed our processes and protocols. I know you had many issues and many concerns with the involvement of the police or not the involvement, whether the school should have initiated that contact or not. I can tell you that when we receive threats, the high school administration, or any administration, follows the same procedures. They're outlined, they're spelled out, they're in the SAVE legislation, they're in our code of conduct.
I was told this is how kids speak right now, and that I need to stop worrying about the little things.
I can't share with you conversations I was not a part of. All right, what I do know is the high school administration got a copy of what was shared and had immediate conversation with Valhalla High School. And I know you know that because they shared that with you. They could not share, Valhalla could not share any sort of discipline or any procedures that they went through with that child in terms of their own discipline. That's a protected record. Student records, whether it's attendance, discipline, or grades, are protected records, and they can't share that with us. I believe what they did share is here's what we would have done and here's how we would have handled this in terms of whether it's suspension, mental health support, working with other agencies, whether it's counselors, psychologists, so on and so forth.
You did. You said that it would be.
I don't know what Valhalla did. I can't speak to what they did. They can't confirm or deny to me how they handled that situation. I know what we shared with you is how we would handle that situation. And we've handled situations like that very similarly to how they were explained to you.
What are our protocols and processes?
When we receive
Right.
threats like that, we interview students. We bring in students who receive the text, or I believe this was Snapchat or something.
They didn't call the police.
Whatever it
When you
was.
call the police on something like that, I just,
Hang on, we gotta do one at a time here. Depending on the level of the threat and whether or not those students are our students, we may contact the police. We may encourage the families to contact the police. Oftentimes, we encourage the families to contact the police because that's where the police report emanates. We work with the police if they want to subpoena records, if they ask for additional information, but the process of the investigation by law is led by the school personnel. It has to be. It's a school matter. When the police end up with it or families file a report, they come and meet with us. They can interview children. They can go to families' homes and have those conversations, which I don't know what they did. I know that you had shared extreme disappointment with how the Valhalla police handled it, and that you felt they gave you the runaround. I can tell you every time we've contacted our state troopers or the Westchester County Police, they've been on it and they work with us.
The state troopers did everything in their power.
I
I'm
understand
very
that.
happy with the
I
state
understand
troopers.
that.
Valhalla, no, not so happy. State troopers did do everything in their power. The school did not. The school should have called the police. There was a death threat made, and the school should have called the police. On the spot. He said he had a semi-automatic. 17 people are dead in Florida
Understood.
with a semi-automatic.
Understood.
the police should have been called. I was actually talked down from calling the police. I've probably said 3 to 5 times. Am I exaggerating? My brother-in-law was standing there with me. I called the police. Please call the police. And they convinced me to not call the police. And I don't understand why. So, again, the policies, there needs to be a policy in place. And who gets to decide what is a crisis? A semi-automatic is a crisis. That justifies a crisis. I'm going to end his life justifies a crisis. And to be told to stop worrying about the little things.
And I can't speak to you how Valhalla handled that.
That was not Valhalla, that was our staff.
No, meaning if the threat emanated from one of our students. I can only tell you how we would respond, how if a threat emanated from one of our students in our school under our supervision.
My name is Deborah Majorano, and to this story, my concern is not what Valhalla did to the student or how Valhalla reacted. My concern is how we reacted and what we did or didn't do to protect her son in light of this.
All the kids.
It's like what protection was put in place to ensure that this child is not going to come back in this school. What was put in place so this child wasn't going to be at the girls' Valhalla basketball game. And how was the next team entering into this same atmosphere not told about this? I just think that all of those steps are urgent and should have all been addressed and taken care of. And the safety of the child that was threatened is your responsibility, not Valhalla's. So I think that at that point, that's when.
I don't want you to confuse anything I said about whether we're responsible for, a Valhalla child or ours. All right. I know that there were immediate and direct conversations between our high school and Valhalla. What I'm saying is how they handled it, how they ensured that the varsity game was going to be smoother, how Valhalla handled to make sure that student didn't show up at any other Valhalla-related events. I can't speak to that. I can only speak to how we would have responded and how we regularly respond had the shoe been on the other foot.
The response is for your student that was threatened, not the child that did the threatening. That's Valhalla's job. But I think that your job is to protect the student that belongs to this district and whose life was threatened.
And other teams that are going to Valhalla.
Absolutely.
Yes, my name is Christine Barada. My daughter was the one who was going to play that night, and Michelle told me, why wasn't our coach told? Nobody was told, not our coach, none of the parents. We're walking into a situation where our children could have been hurt. And I want to know why the coach wasn't told.
And that's a question I can't answer right now. I don't have that level of detail with me right now.
Excuse me, I'm Mike Vasilino, Dad. I just have a quick question. We met with you, Mr. H. It's been maybe 3 weeks now, Michelle? Yeah. Myself, Michelle's cousin Deborah, and I met with you in your office. And at the meeting, we basically wanted to make sure that this doesn't happen again to anybody else's family. Okay, that was one of our main reasons why we came to that meeting. Okay, families that don't have children, they might not understand the serious situation that this is, but families that do have children, I don't want anybody to experience what Michelle and I and our whole family experienced. It was one of the most scariest things that happened to our lives. Okay, and in this meeting, we asked if you can please find out or look into different types of policies and safety of the children. I know you're saying absolutely, sir. It's been almost 3 weeks in a month and we haven't heard back from you. When you promised me, the minute that I shook your hand and you said, I will get back in touch with you or Michelle about this situation. And here we are today at the board meeting of education of Hendrick Hudson, and we still don't have answers. And I just think that this is very serious for families that are going to be here in Hendrick Hudson School District to get these policies intact. So, God forbid something like this happens again to another family, that we're prepared for.
So many things happened since Florida, like daily.
It's just really
Today alone,
scary.
John Jay
I don't think you
Gibson was
have
shut
Mr.
down.
Catalan's attention. He's been on the phone for the past 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's very rude, very rude.
I just want to make sure board members, okay, and superintendent, that, you know, Hendrick Hudson really speeds up on a situation, on different policies, because we don't want to see this happen to anybody else. Okay, and it was one of the scariest things that happened, like I said again. And I don't want to see it happen to anybody else's family or anybody else's child or my friends or anybody. Okay, and it wasn't handled the right way. It really wasn't, and it should have been. And I really hope that there's something that's done about this for the future, because it's really horrible. I mean, we got families and friends here that are here to support us, and I thank everybody for being here. And I just don't want to see it to happen to anybody else's children. I really don't. So, you know, that's really what I want to say.
We do appreciate everybody coming out and speaking about this. Believe me, from the bottom of my heart, because I have spoken with Michelle, safety is our prime, concern of our children. And I made Michelle the promise, and I have told Mr. Hochreiter in discussions with him that we will be looking into this.
Well, why weren't you told? Why did I have to call you? Why wasn't the board informed?
The board's not informed about a lot of it. That's the problem.
Aren't you supposed to be?
I think they're kept in the dark a little too much.
Certain student discipline issues, yes.
It was a death threat with a semi-automatic.
I understand.
Isn't that supposed to go to the board, people?
Hi, I'm Michelle's cousin Deborah. I'm an educator. I work in New York City and currently a crisis manager. So when this unfortunate situation happened and Michelle called me, we talked about it, and I said to her, unfortunately, this is a national epidemic. This is something that I deal with every single day. I also am a Westchester resident. My children attend Westchester schools, and I could probably tell you I'm not exactly 100% sure if my district would be 100% prepared or have policy in place that was clear and coherent for everyone, starting with children, then going to staff, board members, and community members. But I can tell you this, that's what needs to happen. When I asked Michelle, what do you want to happen? She never wanted to get anyone. She never wanted to, point the finger. She said, I just don't want this to happen again. And I said, well, it is going to happen again. Things like this are going to happen. I said, so if your solution is that, no one's ever going to be threatened ever again, that's not going to happen. But you guys can certainly be more prepared. So when we met with your superintendent, he was very gracious, and the same thing I say to parents when I meet with them all the time, no educator comes to school to ever hurt a child. No one ever comes ill-intended. No one ever wants to be in a position where something bad happens to a kid and we made it worse. But sometimes that happens. After 9/11 in New York City, we had to make a lot of changes in terms of emergency response. So did you. It's New York State law. Now we're looking at a more social media, internet threat, crisis and epidemic. Yes, we know how to lock down. Yes, we know how to evacuate. Do we know how to educate our parents? Do we know how to educate our staff? Do we know how to educate our children on how to respond when they get information like this? This text went viral, including my 2 nephews, okay? 24 hours before the school ever got their hands on it. No one said anything. It took one kid who finally spoke up to bring it forward to an adult. So the question is, how are you educating the kids to deal with this new cyber threat? What does your cyber safety curriculum look like? How are your teachers trained? Do they know how to report? What is your ladder of communication? What is your ladder of referral? I am an expert in all of these areas, and I have volunteered my services for free when I met with your superintendent 3 weeks ago. I have yet to receive a phone call. I am still volunteering my services for free to work with all of you, because you can't do it without parents, you can't do it without children, it has to be everyone. It can't be just a couple of people with the information and we'll protect you. Those days are over. We're all vulnerable, and we need to all be equipped with how to deal with these types of situations. That's what they want. That's what this meeting is about. If the policy is weak, make it strong. If the education isn't there, let's get it. Let's get it into the schools. If parents, are not showing up for meetings, well, guess what? You've got their attention now. This is a full meeting full of parents who I am sure are ready, willing, and able to come to any of my parenting workshops on cyber safety for your children that I will do for free. That's all I really wanted to say. Thank you all for the work that you do every single day. If someone hasn't thanked you as an educator, I do, because I know what your work is, and it's not easy. But sometimes when we're wrong, we need to say we're wrong, and when we need to get better, we need to get better, and we need to apologize when we're wrong. Own it.
Kimberly Ryan again. I just have to address this matter. In Furnace Woods School, it has come to my attention that there has been threats that one of the students has been saying about burning down the school, I think killing a teacher, killing a student. Now this is a third grader. And the only way I knew about this is through a PTA page for Furnace Woods where a parent put this information out. And my son is in the same grade as that little girl that has some major issues. Doing a little bit more research, I found out that in that class, one of the other students gets so scared when she has her moments that he hides under a table. Okay? My son is coming home from school, and it may sound funny, but he said a bad word, and I said, we shouldn't be saying that word. And he said, why, Mom? I go to school where I can be killed. A third grader is telling me this. And, obviously it's the news, but there's an actual student that is saying she's going to burn the school down. She's going to burn Mr. Bruno. My understanding is there was a pocket knife. We don't find out. I get that we want to keep people's situations confidential. And I get that we want to help everybody. But in this day and age, knowledge is key. And I want to be informed. You don't have to tell me the person's name, but I want to know the information. I don't want to be relying on going on a Facebook page or my third grader telling me this information. That has to be addressed. And I love Dr. Kramer, and I think she does a wonderful job. And I'm there a lot because my son is a diabetic, so I'm in and out of that school so much. And I've never heard anything about the situation. And like I said, my son is in the grade. So it doesn't just stop here, right? It's coming up now. And what are you guys going to do about it in the future? We need to have this information as parents, sending our kids to the school and putting them in your hands. We need to know what's going on. Thank you.
Hi, Michelle Pinella. I have 1 graduated district, 3 still in the district. Actually, I have 2 questions, one as a taxpayer and one as a mother. So my taxpayer question is just a general question, because I don't understand all of this. When I know obviously taxpayers, we fund the school district. Who, and the school district, I guess, funds, or who funds pensions and the health benefits for people who do retire?
New York State.
New York State.
The school district contributes a percentage based on what the law is or what the percentage rate is at that time.
So you could say that indirectly my taxpayers do in fact fund some of the piece.
Yes.
Okay. That was
and the
right. I just wanted. I
and the employee.
Sure.
I'm sorry, and the employee as well, depending on when the employee got into the system, whether it's the teacher retirement system or the employee retirement system, they pay a percentage of their salary goes to the pension system.
All right. So and then health benefits similar.
Yep, similar.
Similar. Okay. So indirect. So as a taxpayer, I am indirectly funding the health benefits and pensions of retired school employees.
Correct.
Okay, so that, basically I just wanted to answer the question. So going back to the person who retired with full benefits and pension, who, what?
Resigned.
Oh, resigned.
Yes, he's too young to retire.
Okay, resigned, so in fact, okay, so I'm paying for that, okay. So that was my one question, that's that. And my mom question is basically, I mean, it's, I'm sure you guys are gonna talk about this next or soon, is the potential walkouts that, you know, that's being planned nationally. Have you guys, I mean, I know I saw an email today. Are you allowed to talk about the plans that
Yeah, I was
Ken Hudd's gonna?
Yeah, I was going to save this for a little bit later, but it's a good segue. So as many of you know, March 14th has been designated as a national protest or march or recognition or honoring the victims of Florida. What initial conversations we've had, particularly at the middle school and the high school, has been how do we work with our student leaders and their teachers to provide an opportunity for those kids to recognize those that have passed.
Right.
We have to keep in mind what's age appropriate or developmentally appropriate, but we also have to keep in mind keeping kids safe and making sure we can control what the interests of the students are. Since this event, and you know, we did have a week off in between, it's been the top hot button issue at the high school and to a lesser degree at the middle school. Mr. Mackin has met with various student leadership groups from all different angles, met with various teacher leadership groups to see what could we support, what do we want to get behind, what can we make sure is safe. Preliminary ideas would be a voluntary moment of silence for high school kids for those 17 minutes in a safe, secure space, either inside or outside the school. If the space is outside the school, we're working with law enforcement to make sure there's a presence and make sure that if this takes place outside the school, it's in a part of the property that is sort of cordoned off. Right now, I can tell you that likely would be outside in the back of the cafeteria. You've got two tree lines, and we can, you know, sort of protect kids from the south.
Right. That's my concern, right?
Yep. Some schools are walking tracks. Some
outside,
schools
right?
are doing different issues. I've shared some emails this afternoon with a parent who said, you know, I don't support school time being used for a protest, and I understand that. But our take on this is not a protest. It's an opportunity for kids, if they choose to, on their own, for those 17 minutes in a coordinated, supervised fashion, to have a moment of silence or remembrance of how they see fit. If students don't want to participate, again, this is preliminary, they can remain in their class during that time and they will receive instruction. Students that choose to participate in wherever this goes, they'll be responsible for the 17 plus minutes that they miss.
That's basically what my concern, because if you know, there was going to be a planned walk outside of school, personally, I wouldn't send my kid to school that day. That would just be me. But if they have an option not to participate, then I'm.
As of 12:30 this afternoon, the middle school, Mr. Owens is working with the SO and other leadership groups, probably to go more of a town hall sort of forum that's more age appropriate, especially also at the elementary school, to talk about what to do if, or how you're feeling about it, or what to do if someone's not well or doesn't look right. How do we have that conversation? He's done town halls for.
Is that just March 14th? Because I know April 20th, Columbine anniversaries. Anything like?
From our local conversation that we're having is March 14th.
Okay, all right. I know. Okay, thank you.
Well,
Hi, I'm Elise Flantino. And with regards to the walkout, just for the record, I am in full support of any student or staff member who does want to walk out to honor the 17 students who were killed. And at the same time, I'm in as much support of those students and staff members who prefer to not walk out. There are many different ways to honor those who have been lost. People can wear that school's colors, simply, you know, go into a moment of silence, whatever that may be. So thank you for the support. in helping the students and facilitating that. To go back to Michelle and Michael's situation, with regards to establishing policy of what to do in these instances, I'm hearing a lot of, oh yes, we're going to look into that, we're going to look into that. And what happens with a statement like that is that it just dies at that moment, and before you know it, 3 weeks have gone by or a month has gone by, and the looking into it actually has never happened. So I'd like to know what date is the looking into it going to start, and by what date can the parents receive a status report on what policies are going to be put in place. Tomorrow is Thursday, so when's the first date that we're going to look into, and when will the parents have a preliminary plan?
Well, let me first talk about what we've done since. We've had a series of meetings with myself and Mr. Mackin and Mr. Baker. We have a code of conduct that gets reviewed annually and vetted through a committee and approved by the Board of Education. Our policies and procedures, almost all of them emanate from policy services that school districts subscribe to, and that request was made through New York State. We also have attorneys that write policies and procedures for us as well. That request was made. And we're going to weigh the recommendations that they make. We have a policy committee which includes Board of Education members, and any policy that's being reviewed or that is up for potential approval is a public discussion twice. It's on the Board of Education agenda, we read the policy, we have a discussion at this table, and then eventually adopt it. That process usually takes around 6 weeks.
Okay. Okay, so within 6 weeks, the parents can expect to receive some kind of written information, some kind of status update as to
likely
what
a status
is being,
update.
Right,
yep.
Right. It's a process. I understand. I understand.
And I would encourage you to come back to the board meeting.
Oh, well.
Because, well, that's good, because we haven't had that. And it's very nice to see people that are willing to participate here. But when the policies are read or procedures are discussed, you have an opportunity to give your input, and that's much appreciated by all of us.
Okay.
So,
our policy meetings are open meetings. You are allowed to come to them.
Okay. Okay.
Which would be, by the way, a great idea to.
And when do those happen?
Those are on their.
I get an email. I don't know when they're posted.
They're on the school district calendar.
The policy meetings are on the district calendar?
Yes.
It says policy meeting or?
Policy committee.
Thank you.
Clarify the policies are different.
Yeah, this is a good time to clarify policies and procedures. Policies are often derived from state mandates or federal mandates. And procedures are how schools or programs go about implementing those policies. The demand in terms of timeline, expectation, and transparency is at the policy level. That any change in policy has to be vetted, discussed, approved by the board, be available for public consumption, which would go on our board agenda, and then procedures are how those are carried out.
Hi, Michelle Piccolo-Hill. I have 4 kids in the district. I promised myself I wouldn't speak because it makes me very nervous. But I've been very happy with the district so far. My kids, all 4 of them, have had a wonderful time. I've heard some things in the past week or so that have made me very concerned. And I think this stuff happens everywhere. And I think we all know it happens everywhere. But the last thing we want to hear is talking to someone saying, you should go to the meeting tonight because this, and this happened. One of the stories I heard was of a teacher that was hit on the head with a hockey stick and was sent to the hospital. And the child was given 3-day suspension. As a parent, if my kid had been hit on the head with a hockey stick, you better believe I would have expected far more than 3 days suspension. I mean, people are talking about suspending kids for using their right of protest, which I, by the way, wholeheartedly support. So I don't think that was adequate. And I know, you know what, it's a different world. I think threats have been going on forever. And honestly, I'm not surprised that you don't have a system in place. I think the whole world hasn't had a system in place. But what happened in Florida is making us realizing a system needs to be in place. And we're scared because we send our kids here every day, or wherever they go every day. And we trust you. We trust you to watch them. It is very hard for me to let go of my kids every day. And the last thing I want to do is wonder if I'm going to see them at the end of the day, because that is terrifying. And that's why you're getting this level of emotion from everyone, because we're trusting you guys to have our kids' best interests at heart. That means their education, that means their emotional stability, and that means their physical safety. And a couple of the things I've heard, aside from this being hit on the head with a hockey stick, which is almost a little more shocking to me, not that the death threat isn't horrendous, but I sort of feel like kids have always said things, you know, the timeliness of the AK and all that other stuff, and I do think you should have taken it a lot more seriously. I think he should have been spoken to. I think it probably should, a notice should have gone to the district to say that at least you're dealing with it. People just want to know. We know that you're trying, and we know that you have the kids' best interests at heart, but if you're keeping it quiet, it makes us question what you're keeping quiet. So if you had said this threat was made, we're looking into it, we're dealing with ways to keep the children safe, you would have probably a fraction of the parents here. Another thing which seems rather insignificant and silly is my daughter was talking with her friends the other day. They had like a meeting of this DI group they're in. And at the end, they were talking about how they hate to use the bathrooms in the high school because it always smells like Juuls. And I was shocked. I was like, what? And they said, yeah, no, it smells so much. And I said, but if it smells so much, don't they do something about it? No, they look the other way. What do you mean they look the other way? No one does anything. And then I found out the bathroom down here is locked, so there's only a certain bathroom they can go to. And I was thinking, that seems absolutely ludicrous. Like, no one, and again, I'm not here every day. I know you're under budget constraints. I know you're probably under staff constraints. But a lot of kids, and it wasn't just my daughter, it was a bunch of kids that were talking and saying, yeah, I hate to go to the bathroom too. Yeah, you know what it smells like? And you know, just to give you an idea of what they were saying, it smells like, you know when someone goes to the bathroom and it smells really badly and then you have that air freshener over it? And I'm thinking, if the kids know what this smells like, how do the parents and the teachers and the other people that use this bathroom not know what it smells like? Unless they're going to a bathroom that kids can't use. Because if that's the case, they should have to use the same bathroom so they're aware of what's going on in the bathrooms. So it seems like such an insignificant thing compared to a death threat, but it gives me an impression of what is being paid attention to, what is being swept under the table, and it does make me question what's being done. And again, I know you have my kids' best interests at heart. It takes a lot to take my kids from me, so I trust you. Please live up to that trust. That was it. So, thank you.
Just to answer you, we all have children. We have grandchildren. I have a grandchild. I've been a teacher in this district, and believe me, and I can speak about this from the bottom of my heart, we all do care about children, because when you're talking about taking care of your children, we want all children taken care of. That's why we're on the board, because we're hoping we can make a difference, you know, and we try our hardest. And you're right, many times you're hearing about things we haven't heard about. Maybe we're not supposed to hear about them. You know, there are certain privacy laws that we can't overstep, and it becomes the most difficult thing, because many times even talking to a parent, you so want to say something, you know, to argue back, and you have to zip your lip because you're not allowed to talk about certain things.
I do understand, absolutely.
But believe me, are our interests not children first? I can tell you that there is nobody sitting here at this table, and I speak for administrators, I speak for board members, I speak for our superintendent, that does not care about children and put them first.
So, no, I believe you. I definitely do. Yeah. But I guess some of my questions are, and I understand the privacy issues. Like, you know, when Kim was talking about the third grader, I could run it through my head, and I was thinking, okay, is this a third grader that was traumatized by what happened in Florida? So the administration couldn't say anything because they didn't want the child sort of cast in this glow with the parents and the kids and the rest of the district, so they have to be careful. I get it, I understand it, but a little more information, I think, would help me as a parent to know that you guys are on board. Honestly, the two stories that shocked me the most wasn't the death threat stories. I know that may seem odd to everybody, but it was the Jewel conversation and it was the hockey stick. Again, I would love to hear you address why someone that attacks someone and sends them to the hospital is given 3 days suspension. And secondly, you know, and again, these are the stories that are out there. So if we were given more information, rumors wouldn't spread, or not as wildly. And secondly, you know, the bathroom story, it just seems to me like if you kids all know it, don't the teachers know it? And those things sort of, you know, it was an aha moment where I sat there going, wait a second, maybe I should question a little more. And I pay attention to my kids. I'm pretty involved in some of you know me, and know that I'm pretty involved with my kids, and I can be a loudmouth when it's in their best interest, and that's when the Italian in me takes over. And I guess that made me go, wow. It was one of those moments where all those stories I had heard about various high schools and all the things that happened in high school, and I was thinking, okay, I want someone in that bathroom periodically checking to see if kids are dueling in there. Why isn't someone going in there to see if it smells? Why isn't there some, and I know it seems silly, but it made me question all the other things. It was like the first step, and it just made me go, okay. So, you know, that's my concern.
Well, we are listening to everything tonight, and I do know that all of us will be more diligent in putting certain things in place. So thank you.
No, it's here. Hi, everybody. Jen Kapper. Know you all. 2 kids in the district. I've been in the district for 13 years. And the one thing we're talking a lot about policy. We're talking a lot about communication. I agree with all of those things and concur with Michelle a lot that we need to do better. But one of the things that I think have been sorely neglected in this district in the 13 years is the actual facility and how we're going to address the physical makeup of these buildings to make them safer. I have nephews at Lakeland. I have friends in Mayapack.
That's tonight, too.
And yeah,
that's our discussion tonight.
That any
that's going to be our discussion tonight.
Yeah, because every other school I know,
we're
I
doing
don't know if I can stay, but every other school I know, you can't even physically get into the building without showing a photo ID, a printed pass with your photo on it, locked doors, no props, no gym door open all day long by the stadium. Blue Mountain Middle School, Mrs. LaVecchia is 9 miles away from the door. Before you could run down Mr. Kelly's hallway just being buzzed in. The physical makeup of these schools are unsafe, and they need to be safer, and that is an easy, quick fix that shouldn't wait 6 weeks, 12 weeks. Budget adoption, none of those things. Our kids' lives cannot wait that long. And it's been something that has bothered me since the day I was in this district. And now, in light of what has happened, I do not think any single person at this table can wait another minute to make those physical changes in the building. Lastly, we do not have a dedicated police department in this district, so we don't have anybody looking out for us. And I work in Ossining, I own a school in Ossining, and the police in Ossining stop by my building every day to check on us. We do not have that here, so we need an SRO. We need an SRO in this building every day, making sure Mayapack has one, Lakeland has one, Yorktown has one. We need an SRO who can keep our children safe. Thank you.
Jen, this is everything that we're discussing and we have been discussing. There will be a presentation tonight on the bond. And a lot of our, well, because you need money to do it, Jen. Yeah. I would love to say we could do it tomorrow.
13 years. You know, I don't think we can wait.
Help us get this one passed. Yeah, I promise you. I mean, you know, there are things. You're absolutely right. So,
thank you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Hi, my name is George Lentino. I have a daughter who graduated and a son who's a freshman. I want to go back to something that you had said earlier, Mr. Hochreiter, is that you had said that, you know, when this happened, you guys immediately followed all the current in-place procedures and policies that are supposed to happen with Michelle and Michael and their family. What are those procedures? What are you supposed to do? And is there somewhere where we can read that? I know you said that we're going to have, you know, looking into what our procedures can be, but you seem to imply that there are current procedures that are supposed to be followed when a student here gets a death threat. And I just would like to know what those are. And I'd really like to know if you actually followed them, because to me, I feel like having the school board notified should be one of those procedures. Is there somewhere we can read what they are when a student at Hen Hut gets a death threat? What are they?
I don't know, and I mean that very sincerely. Some, you know, when I use the word procedure, some of these things, and this is not I have to say it, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time. Some of these things or issues that schools deal with, unfortunately, are routine. They are. Michelle Piccolo Hill mentioned it. Some of these matters that we deal with on a routine basis, death threats, texting, sexting, threats, bringing a knife to school, names of people I don't want on the face of the earth, have sadly become more of a norm. So when I talk about, you know, policies or procedures, I'm talking about how we routinely respond to issues that are of student discipline or may lead to student discipline. All right. In many of those cases, in all of those cases, when anyone receives a text message that's threatening, whether anyone's life is in danger, or a text message with pictures that shouldn't be communicated, the first line of defense is to make sure those get reported. And they get reported to various people, teachers, administrators, counselors, social workers, so on and so forth. The next step in that process is an administrator gets notified, because they're the ones who can interview, who are legally bound and approved to interview students and can conduct the investigation. Sometimes, or oftentimes, when schools have school resource officers, the school resource officer does not conduct those investigations, because then it becomes a criminal matter. And that goes down an entirely different road in terms of how to get information, how to try to resolve the situation and move forward. Sometimes in schools, and I came from a district that had a school resource officer, they would supervise the conversation, or they would be in the room taking notes, but it wouldn't be their interrogation or questioning of kids. Ultimately, when that information ends up in an administrator's hand, depending on the context of the threat, and if we can identify who sent the threat, we identify those kids. At the same time, we identify witnesses, and oftentimes kids are separated. Maybe more than one student sent a text message or Snapchat or whatever they're using today, and an assistant principal may have someone, and another assistant principal or so on and so forth. So when I talk about, you know, policies and procedures, those are the systems in place by doing it a lot, sadly.
No, and I hear you. I just feel like maybe we should elevate the priority level for something like this.
We should do better.
Yeah, and that kind of thing, you know, and understanding the timeline and how long it takes for certain things to happen, and I get that you got to look into stuff, but I mean, I've known Ralph since he was this big.
Yep, I understand. I understand. I can tell you,
while these things are routine, and I'm not going to attack you for the word. While these things are routine, there are some things that shouldn't be routine, that should be elevated, should be taken seriously. Everybody should be called. Parents, the school board, they should be notified. And while I understand that, you know, we're all parents and we get involved when something really touches us, and we're not always here, and sometimes giving us more information can fuel a bigger fire. And I understand administrators and educators not necessarily wanting to tell us everything. I get it. I really get it. But knowing that something happened, I think someone else said this, knowing that something happened and that you're handling it. That is all I want. Knowing that when a parent comes into this school, they're handled with the utmost respect, particularly when it's a situation that is this serious. And I just feel like we need to elevate that, and hopefully that's what you're looking into in terms of new policies and procedures.
And I want to respond to one thing you said, because there's a sense of frustration emanating, and it should, on both sides of the aisle, for lack of a better term, is what we want or can or expect to be communicated and what we're allowed to. And I don't want to lean on that as an excuse, but you have to trust us when some of us have been in these positions 15, 20 years, or board members 15, 20 years.
I hear you. However, rumors and innuendo are worse.
I understand.
Are worse than
social media.
And social media, and it's everywhere. And now nobody can stop people from going onto the PTA and posting something on the Facebook saying, giving out names and throwing out kids' names and throwing out parents' names and throwing out people who are resigned names, and it shouldn't be that.
So I'll go there for a minute with you, because the issue that began on the HenHUD parent website, Facebook, and I don't have Facebook, I got a copy of it Monday morning. I got notified of something that was posted Monday morning. I got a physical copy of it. My first call was to the principal. Do you know this is out there? No, I don't know that's out there. I don't even have access to the Facebook page she sent. Well, and I'm reading it to her. So-and-so, such and forth, will you call the parent? Sure. By the time the printout comes to me and she calls the parent, there are 15 other replies, and then the principal's frustrated because not all of the posts are accurate.
I'm sure.
They're not true.
I'm sure.
But we're going to have to deal with the rumor and innuendo, or the best way to deal with the rumor and innuendo is if your kid comes home and says something about something that happened in school, pick up the phone and call your teacher or call any one of the administrators, and they'll tell you what they're obligated to tell you. And I can promise you that every child, we'll use an elementary one for example, a student who brought a knife, or let's say a student brings a knife, and there is a line of questioning or interrogation or conversations with parents or sometimes CPS or social workers or psychologists, kids who are immediately involved in those situations, those parents get phone calls. And to the extent that the principal or assistant principal can answer the questions, they do. And but we have to protect the integrity of the investigation or what have you, but the record of the child, and that's one of the most frustrating things.
I completely understand that. I just feel like
You're just saying when there's a rumor going around, quell it.
Somehow, well, but I don't know if you can quell it. I get that, but
Something.
You can say there's a rumor going around.
It's saying something and nothing at the same time. And I'll give you an example. I penned an email to middle school parents late in the week before vacation because police showed up to the school. Now the police were already there doing rounds in response to what happened in Florida. They were at the high school, they were at the middle school, they do rounds and pop into elementary schools when they can, but their focus was middle schools and high schools. In a conversation I had with the principal, he said, look, we typically wouldn't send an email when a police car or two are at the front door because they're routinely here. But everyone's on high alert as a result of what happened in Florida. So we sent an email saying, don't worry, it was an issue actually with an adult, nothing to see here, we got it. The onslaught of what happened after, often, well, who and what, and, are kids safe, but you said it was an adult, or when we send a email blast or a phone call about something as simple as weather, the number of people that, call back and say, I didn't read it, what does it say, or is it an emergency? So we're always trying to find.
I understand.
We're trying to find the sweet spot of how everyone is transparent and informative, but doesn't violate anyone's privacy, and it stinks.
I just want a little bit more.
I
read everything you said.
I hear you.
I read everything that you sent out.
I hear you.
I think it's very difficult sometimes to give you the information you may want but I think we also have to do better at getting back to people in a timely manner. I think that's an obligation that we have, and people deserve to have that, to have you respond or a board member respond in a very timely manner to people. And I think if there's information there that we can share with you, that we do share with you in a very generic way, I think that would make people feel very appeased and very validated about the things that are going on, because I think there are certain things that are out in the community that are rumors that are not true, and we haven't been able to say they're not true, or they are true, you know, in other cases. But you know, I think that you deserve that, and that is something that we definitely
I appreciate that, and I know all of us would
at.
appreciate that, and appreciate you making the extra effort on that. And I just really feel like in this particular case, we wanted more.
Well, I said to Michelle, you know, there was a time back years ago you could say to somebody, you know, I'm so mad I could kill you. And that was okay, because, you know, you knew it wasn't an intent that was real. In today's climate, this is not something that people can say and have it be acceptable. So, you know, we do understand times are changing, but courtesy to people and knowledge is something that everybody deserves. So, thank you.
I'm sorry. The one piece that I just, you know, in listening to it seems like the biggest issue is communication. It's the constant theme here. And all I can say is that if you do have a concern like that, your child comes home and says, my suggestion is if you don't have the effort, you don't send a note to the teacher and say, this is what I'm hearing, this is what's coming out, and you might want to get ahead, and CC the principal, and CC Mr. Hochreiter, or whomever you feel that needs to do so. But I would reach out. Don't let Facebook be your guide. I mean, that's like the telephone game from like 100 years ago. It's just, it takes on a life of its own.
And I just want to...
If you don't give your parents the information, they're going to try and get it themselves. That's why this page exists. There is, that's why this page exists. If there's an incident at the school, there's absolutely no reason why it should not be protocol to send home a general message.
That's what I'm
not
saying.
With any details.
That's what
but
we're saying.
We just said that we sent our first email, or one of very few, because a police officer stopped by, and because of the climate.
No, we have sent a lot of. I think you're absolutely.
Well, then why didn't the board members know about a death threat? Why didn't parents know? Why didn't teachers know? Why didn't coaches know? Why didn't anyone know? If communication protocols are tight, everyone would know that this happened. Everyone. You wouldn't have this crowd.
Protocols could be tight.
No, you don't have protocols. I asked your superintendent to produce them at the meeting. He took out no piece of paper. I asked him to show me. I printed out what you had on your website. It was from 2012. I said, please tell me. He said, if this was a situation between two of our students, I could verbatim tell you what the policy was. I said, okay, let's pretend it is. There was no policy. He didn't give me the steps. He didn't take out a piece of paper and say, look, Deb, this is our policy. This is what happens. This is how parents are notified. This is how we address it. This is how the board knows. This is our ladder of discipline. This is how it's communicated. It didn't exist. And if it does exist, you just had a parent ask you, and I can kiss you, sir, for asking that question, where is it? We've searched your website. It doesn't exist. No parents have received a handbook. No student has received a handbook. Has any staff member received a handbook?
I'm going to cut you off there because that's patently false. Every student in our high school receives the code of conduct.
Where was it? Well, not the code of discipline, the ladder of referral and communication in an emergency.
Every staff member receives an employee handbook. Those are updated frequently. I don't have it in front of me to tell you what page to go to in terms of chain of command or protocol or those sort of things. All right, I can tell you, and because you mentioned it,
but what you didn't have it that day either. You knew it all coming. Why didn't you bring it today?
What I had shared with you is, had this been an incident that took place on our school property,
let's say it did. What would have happened? Where's the piece of paper?
I just walked everyone through.
You never talked about how it. No, you didn't. You didn't talk about how.
Actually, they asked what would happen between two students because
you brought up a question.
A hockey stick incident, and we asked why were they only suspended for 3 days? We asked what is the protocol
for a child who was attacked with a hockey stick, and what was the protocol, and why were they only suspended for 3 days? And it just kind of got brushed over, and we didn't hear.
Excuse me?
If you have
You have to come to the podium.
You have to come.
And I want to make one more comment where George is back there. Mary Pampergy, one of our board trustees, talked about Facebook and the power or the craziness of it. That's the best word. There was an incident on Facebook today that one of our principals called a parent who posted something. The parent profusely apologized, said, "Oh, you're right, Principal so-and-so, I'm sorry, I misrepresented the issue. I'll take it down." Well, that solved the problem. And the principal said, damage is done, because you can scroll through a series of misrepresentations or honest mistakes, it doesn't matter. And what it does is it creates fervor when the individual or the source of the information was never communicated. So while I certainly understand and I will own how we communicate going forward, personally and as an organization, I will own that. The best source to get information in a timely manner is start with your child's teacher and start with their principal. You will get the honest truth to the extent that information can be shared regarding a student's academic behavior or discipline.
And assure you of whether...
And assure you of various steps or whatever that's taking place. And I wanted to make sure
I appreciate that, thank you. And just to be clear, I don't get my information from Facebook. I actually listen to what you send out. And when there are rumors, you try to just say, oh, well, those are probably rumors. It's just that you guys need to know that there are rumors. And hopefully you know that there are rumors. If you don't know that there are rumors, you're not doing your job. If there are rumors, you should do something about those, but that's not the issue I want to talk about. You should pay attention to that stuff, okay? Great. But your job is to be the Board of Education for our school district, right? And to tell us when things are going on that you can tell us. Alleviate our concerns when they need to be alleviated, and and we're there to support you and vote you in and hope that you do a good job with our kids. I do. My daughter is in college. She's having a great time. She loves it.
Well, for example, what you said though, that there's a rumor out there, you see it on Facebook, bring it. Maybe, frankly, maybe it's out there and somebody hasn't heard about it, and you bring it to the principal or the teacher and you say, this is what's out there. Let me look into it. Let me figure it out. I'll get back to you. And absolutely, there need to be protocols about timing and doing it and turnaround and who's in addressing these issues.
Right.
But
I
can't.
think that's a great idea. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I'll do that now when I see that kind of thing. Or maybe you guys could tell us to do that, not just me and not just here, but come up with some kind of procedure or policy about notifying the parents about how to handle rumors. Maybe you've done it in the past, maybe you did it 5 years ago, maybe you did it 10 years ago. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like the more communication we get
some people are hesitant to do that. But again, if there is something out there and the principal doesn't know about it, she doesn't know that it's a concern.
Of course.
So and if she knows it, she's going to say, oh my gosh, if this is what's going on, let me address this and alleviate these concerns, because we have the Connect Ed, we have this. And again, it does seem that communication seems to be at the crux of everybody's concern. Well, not every concern, but communication is it's a constant theme that I'm hearing from the dozen people that have spoken previously.
Yeah, and I think that it's important as part of whatever procedure you have going forward, that communication is a key aspect of it. And we really do appreciate the job that you all do, and the job that you do, Mr. Hochreiter, it actually is really appreciated. And we think that you do a great job. We just want, I wanted this situation to be handled a little bit better.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Rachel Fenty. I think I know pretty much everybody in this room.
I'm sorry?
Rachel Fenty. I have 4 kids in district. I have a sophomore, an 8th grader, a 5th grader, and a 1st grader. And I actually wasn't going to speak, because I think pretty much everybody has said what I was thinking. And I'm hearing a lot about policy and procedure, but I'm not hearing about consequence. My son was threatened in the school district in 6th grade with a knife. Nothing was done. Carol was the only one who spoke to me. I emailed Mr. And this child was still in my son's classroom, to where I was getting emails from Mr. Marotti for months about the behavioral issues between my son and this other boy, and nothing was ever done. And when I asked to separate the two of them, I was told they can't take this child out of the classroom for personal reasons. So my son was going to have to be the one. And it was my son that was painted as the instigator. There was no consequence to this child. He had no negative repercussions. His behavior was allowed. Another incident I'd like to talk about, I'm going to read something to you. This was my, at the time, freshman. Everything he says about me.
I don't know.
I am fat.
I'm sorry, you said it's you're a freshman?
This was at the time. This was last year. Everything he says about me. This is happening in a classroom, in a homeroom classroom. I'm fat. Kill myself. He calls me a lesbian. I'm stupid. I smell. I'm ugly. I'm dirty. I should kill myself. Suck. My earrings are ugly. I should die. When I sent this to her guidance counselor told me, oh, he has a crush on her. There was no negative repercussion. None. His brother is now doing the same exact thing to her. Again, no negative repercussion. There's no consequences to these kids. They think they can come into the school and jewel in the bathroom and get a slap on the wrist. They think they can hit a teacher with a hockey stick and get 3-day suspension. A varsity basketball player can tell a girl, varsity basketball player, the hot shot, the hot guy, the guy every girl wants to date, can tell a girl to kill herself. And he gets suspended. But then gets to go right back onto that basketball court, doesn't he? Because we got to the county center, didn't we? There was no negative repercussions. Suspension's a joke to these kids. I asked my daughter, are you going to walk out? She was maybe. I said, why are you going to walk out? What is it about? Oh, I don't know, I'll get out of class. Come on. This is the climate we're creating here. These kids are not feeling safe and valued. They feel like it's a joke. They feel like they can go and jewel in the bathroom or cut class. I saw a bunch of kids walking around today in front of the school. I thought we were a closed campus. But they can just come and go because they're not afraid. They're not afraid of getting in trouble. Third graders saying they're going to burn down a school? I can't imagine at 8 years old saying I'm going to burn down my school. I would be petrified. These kids are not afraid of getting in trouble. What is reflection room? A 5th grader at Furnace Woods assaulted another student so badly, this child had to go to the emergency room and get an ultrasound because he was kicked in the testicles and they were afraid one of them went up in his body. The consequence to this child was, oh, he had to sit Dr. Kramer for lunch. My 5th grader has said to me, Mommy, what do I do if he hits me? Who is he? I got a kid 15. Me too. Jesus. Mommy, what do I do if he hits me? I don't know how to answer him. Because my kids are afraid of him. But their peers aren't. And I think we really need to take a look at policy, procedure, and consequences. There needs to be consequences to these behaviors. Telling a 15-year-old girl it's okay that he told you to kill yourself because he has a crush on you is unacceptable.
These counselors need consequences.
So I'll talk a little bit about consequences in a different way. Certainly we have the traditional consequences of suspension in school, out of school, so on and so forth. And sometimes those are made public because kids talk and some kids enjoy it and some kids see it as a badge of honor, and with social media, the kid gets suspended for 3 days is probably likely to spin it as you know, look at me, good for me, I get 3 days off. I'll tell you about all of the other very quiet things that school counselors, social workers, psychologists, administrators, teachers do with kids that exhibit behaviors that are changing, right? Threatening behaviors, prospective behaviors. We get families involved. CPS gets involved. Mental health agencies get involved. We do mental health arrests on students because of their behavior. We do mental health risk assessments on kids because of their behavior. We meet with parents and sometimes advocates and lawyers to implore them and beg them to have their child or children evaluated by outside professionals and therapists who are dealing with very specific, sensitive behavior that just doesn't seem right, whether it's a 5th grader, 8th grader, or a kid on the basketball team. Those are interventions to help students with what's going on between the ears. And those are very quiet, and they're oftentimes very effective, and more effective than when I see a student through the state education discipline process, where I have 3 choices. You can go back to school, I can suspend you longer, or I can tell you you can't come to school here anymore. Our graduation rate for our high school came out not too long ago, 96%. It's a great rate. The high school principal and some of his staff could sit down and identify some of those specific students who didn't make it because of some of the issues I've talked about that they didn't take us up on. They decided to quit school rather than get their head right. They decided to give up on their dream of a diploma because they had mental health issues and we couldn't get them at 18 or parents to commit. I had a meeting that was scheduled this morning with a middle schooler who we had to do a long-term suspension to mandate that the family come to a meeting to talk about the mental health of their child. And this is not a hen hut issue. This is a school issue. This is a lot of places. Jim Mackin, the high school principal, came to a meeting like this 2 years ago and said, I have a trend. I'm seeing a trend of behavior, and our kids need a different kind of support. Not suspensions, not thrown out, not a message where the school quits on them. We need more social workers. We need more psychologists to deal with kids at an individual basis, to talk about behavior and talk about how hurtful or harmful those behaviors are. Some may call that we're babying, some may say we're light on them or we're not tough on crime. It's a commitment that these people around this table have made to make sure that reading, writing, math, science are all there and that kids' heads are right. So while I'm not going to talk about someone who kicked someone in the testicles, what their suspension was, because a suspension isn't the only thing this district can do, and it's not the only thing this district has done to support kids and families. But I have been a part of far too many meetings when families show up and think we're targeting kids based on asking them to get help. I've been part of far too many meetings where the school has finally resorted to calling CPS, Child Protective Service, to engage the family in how we help kids do better and do different. Those are very, very quiet things that people don't see. They're not public. They shouldn't be. But if you talk to a psychologist, a counselor, or a social worker, and if you ask them what they do every day, they will tell you they meet with students individually in small groups. They're consulting with parents and outside agencies. I can tell you, and I'll give you a broad number, 9 out of 10 superintendent hearings that I do where students are suspended for beyond 5 days don't come back to any of our schools without mental health screening, drug and alcohol abuse screening, and without a commitment from the family that those outside therapists, for whatever issue we're trying to work on, signs a release to work with our people inside the school. And sadly, it takes suspensions and a week off or a month off or 3 months out of school for that message to resonate. There was a high schooler last year who didn't participate in graduation because of a series of behaviors where we finally said, we can't keep doing this. We have to break the cycle. And we said to that student, if you can demonstrate that in the next 6 weeks, your tutoring report is good, your drug and alcohol counselor comes back with a positive report, that your outside therapist has a good report for our inside therapist, you can walk in graduation. The parents begged me to allow that child to participate in graduation even though none of that criteria was met. And I ruined the kid's high school experience. These are real issues. These are real kids, and the consequence, while I understand what Rachel's saying, consequence, and I need to see it, I need to feel it, so many resources go into working with kids that are invisible and need to remain invisible. And sometimes they're successful and sometimes they're not. But the last thing that we should resort to, or the only thing we should resort to, are throwing kids out of school with no safety net. And that's what this district believes, that's what our staff believes, and it's quiet, and it's unassuming, and it's not public. But that's what those people do. And we have a lot of them, and we have a lot of student needs. So I appreciate, Rachel, what you're saying. I can't speak to this issue versus that issue or consequences. I can tell you that all of those people that with different titles I just talked about are working with kids at risk 99% of the day. And they should be, because today's kids are wired differently. We know that. It's a different ballgame than it was 20 years ago. And that's the commitment this district has made to supporting all students, not just making sure they graduate on time or graduate with honors. And it's hard. It's hard for people to understand that and appreciate it because we don't see the immediate impact. We don't see behavior leads to action, and we almost need that a tangible sort of evidence. That evidence doesn't exist anymore. We've learned that doesn't work. Research has told us that doesn't work, and we've made financial commitments to address kids differently. So that's maybe an answer that solves or helps connect some of the dots, but that's reality. That's our reality. That's Lakeland's reality. That's upstate New York reality. That's reality in Florida. And we're working to work with kids, but families to make sure they're helping us work with kids. So I've got to talk about the invisible factor and the invisible work that's under the covers or under the top sheet of paper, because they're working their butts off trying to make sure kids are supported, sometimes when they don't get it at home.
Kim Ryan. I commend you for that. I was a legal aid attorney out of Brooklyn, and my social worker kept a lot of my clients out of jail. And it's a wonderful thing, and it's great that the district does that. However, when you talk about getting them right between the ears, obviously the guy in Florida was not right between the ears, and now 17 people are dead. So I have to get a little selfish here, and I have to care about my children. And I'm not sending my children to school so that this other child is going to get right between the ear while my kid is in class with him. I'm sorry, I'm not. And I think the reason why we have these school shootings is because of that policy that we have in Lakeland and Florida has. Back in my day, if a kid did stuff like this, boom, gone, see you later, okay? There was no shootings. Nowadays, I get it. Listen, I feel horrible for these kids. That poor third grader must be going through something traumatic in her life. But she is affecting these innocent children that are in the class. So basically, it's a great idea, but when my kid and all the innocent children, okay, are afraid because you're working on getting somebody right in the head, that's a problem. And the person that hit the teacher the student hit a student? Yep. The student hit a student? I would tell you right now, and I will put it right here, I'm a lawyer. If this district ever, I have a child that's ever treated like that, this district will be sued, okay? We need to change it now. I agree with you that people need to be helped, and I love that. But the victims have gone to the side. It's all about the perpetrators. What about the victims? What about my third grader that's afraid to go to school? My 8th grader woke up in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning. We were talking about the Florida shooting. And Mom, can you sleep with me? I'm afraid to go to school. And she's a confident girl. So I think we need to change the philosophy of this district a little bit to support the good people that are here and their kids who want to be safe.
ears, and you went through that whole heartfelt speech for these poor children, and the consequences you don't see, but you never said, what were all these social workers that we brought in, first of all, never asked my son how he was. No one ever asked how he was, would ask anything. He's the one who brought it to the teacher. He's the one who convinced to go to the teacher, but nobody talked to at all. Nobody talked to Rachel's daughter. She's the victim.
Either.
What about her daughter that we're not helping her? What about, anybody have a freshman in art class? Did anybody get the letter from the art teacher? That teacher's at her wit's end, and it's at different periods. That is, she's sending letters home, pretty much apologizing that if your children's not getting the full benefit of me, it's because she's taking care of all these other kids. Their academy is over there. Don't know if that's 100% true. Seems to be some of the kids that you're referring to. They're cursing at her, they're yelling at her, they're creating a riot. Anyone who raised their hand, if you asked your children, probably got the same response. Yes. And they're all in different periods. They're not in the same classes. Because I talked to 3 boys today, and they were all in different classes. So what did I say to my son? Which I talk to him constantly, both of my children. You guys are leaders in this school. You're captains of sport teams. You're the strong people of the school. What are you supposed to do? He goes, Mom, I constantly am fighting with these kids to sit down. Was on the wrestling team, was standing right next to him. He goes, Michelle, he almost got into a fist fight over it, trying to get this kid to stop cursing at the teacher. Yes, right. And I said, are you kidding me?
What's academy?
What's academy?
Yeah. I have 4 kids in the district and I don't know what academy is. Can someone tell me what academy is?
Academy's a program in the high school with smaller class size for students that need different learning spaces, sometimes they manipulate the schedule within the regular school day. Different way of delivering instruction.
Violent tendencies? No. Is it emotional tendencies? Is it just kids that need alternative learning?
Nope. Okay. He said that the class is out of control all of the time. Again, people who raised their hand, this are in different classes. They had the same exact experience that these kids are taking over the classroom. She can't get a handle on the classroom, so she sends a letter home to the parents apologizing that I'm not giving my all to your child. So while we're helping these kids get right between the ears, my kid didn't get counseling, her daughter didn't get counseling, our children aren't getting the education that they need because we're helping these kids that seem to be a little out of control instead of
Helping the victims.
Helping the victims. Again, I still don't understand to this day that no one ever went for the whole day at 4 tests that day. No one. His coach, yes, and I love his coach, and he kept checking on him, but his teachers didn't even know. How do you think he did on those tests?
That's a crisis.
He was only spoken to a couple of minutes, and then the bell rang, and he said that they said, come on, the bell, get to class before you're late. And they rushed him to class, so we might need to change who we're, what?
I said I got to know how the boy got more speaking to.
Well, we have 3 presentations that we have to have tonight, so if anybody else would like to speak, please come to the microphone now, because given the time factor, we really have to do this. So, thank you.
Just one thing, I need to come to the podium.
You have to.
I'll see. The one that's known, or one policy that's known.
So, I've been here for about an hour and a half. Very happy I just married Pat. Obviously there's a level of communication that is extremely poor. And I'll use that word, poor. That's the best word I can use at this point. That needs to be fixed immediately. You guys agree?
Yes.
Yes. Appreciate that. Hearing about these policies and procedures, I don't think these parents have seen the policies and procedures. Do you guys think that you can email all the parents these policies and procedures? Is that something that we can do as a group?
I think that some of the policies and procedures are going to be tweaked, and some of the policies and procedures are going to be worked on, and that's why we talked about a 6-week period where you can come back and give input to the policies and procedures.
All of our policies are online. So
Absolutely.
they're all online, so if a parent like myself, go through them and say, dude, this needs to get fixed, or something, or you have a policy missing, or something like that.
No, the policies are...
procedure for a student receiving a death threat. And that's a problem.
I can't, if you're standing there, we can't all hear you, and we really would like to hear from everybody. So can we please agree to have one person speak at a time so that we can get to everybody and move on? I hate to have to do this, but...
I'm sorry. My name is Andre McGann. I'm brother-in-law of Michelle.
He has children who lives that block. They're little.
You don't have to say you're sorry.
So I'm sorry, because a lot of people are talking. So what's online specifically?
All the procedures are not, protocols are not, policies are.
Policies are very high level and generally static. You know? So if there's a policy that's missing, like a policy might be, we need to keep our kids safe. Right, but then how you actually do that, those are the procedures. And I think that's what we're talking about here, is the procedures versus the policy. So the policies are up there and available.
On board docs.
Right, on board docs.
I have to leave, and I just want to say that I hear where everybody's coming from.
You can't talk for yourself. I know. I hate to have to do this to you. I'm sorry.
It's okay. But being on other boards and other things, one of the things that you do have to understand is I think what they're trying to acknowledge is that there are some policies that exist and some procedures that exist. They don't necessarily address anything that's currently going on. So that those don't exist. That's what they want to fix, and that's what they want to work on. And as a board, they have to follow certain procedures, and one will be announcing this discussion. Then it'll be having the discussion, and then it'll be voting on the discussion. So that's their time frame. I'm not taking sides or anything. I just wanted to kind of give a little background as to why it's going to take 6 weeks or more. Is because there are procedures for that they have to go through by the state and everything else.
Thank you.
Correct?
You're correct.
All right. Thank you all. I look forward to hearing about all the wonderful changes you're going to make.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Sharon Salme, and I'm a parent here.
Wait, it's okay for them to come to the podium.
3 that have gone through and 2 that are here. 2 things. I totally get what Debbie's saying about all the procedures and everything, but I have to leave to go do a carpool pickup. I just want to know that before this meeting ends, hopefully before midnight, that you guys would come up with how the buildings will be secure, like by tomorrow. I mean, I don't see why you can't lock all the doors, just change. That takes, that can be done, right?
All the doors are supposed to be.
No, the gym door, there's ways to get in this building. And the other schools, like the middle school, somebody should be stationed at that front door. Even the camera, that building's not secure. The middle school, the elementary school, Furnace Woods, I don't know about the other ones, they can see who's coming in, but that side door, back where the janitors go in and out by the gym, I've pulled up to park and it's open. So those are all things that can be fixed in a day. But besides that, how we got off topic about knowing what's going on. So if you have a child that comes home and tells you everything, then you're good. I have chatty children, and they'll tell me everything pertaining to what's in their day. So I would pick up the phone, I would call the principal, I would call the teacher. Back in the day, I would have called the other parent, but you're not allowed to do that anymore. But, well, I was told by our Furnace Woods principal that I couldn't do that. I know. Anyway, and it was my son that had said something to someone that I felt was inappropriate. And I'm like, why can't I just call? And And my husband's like, why do you ask permission? You can call anybody you want. So then I called her. So anyway, my point, I know, like, yeah. So my point to this is, I think it should be listed out too, what people should do or say, because I also have children that wouldn't say a word until years later. For example, about behavioral and about poor teachers that are like having nervous breakdowns. So my daughter, who is now a freshman in college, went to a review for I don't know what test down at another high school. She came home all smiley, happy. She just spent 6 hours studying. I said, why are you so happy? She goes, oh my God, I wish I went to a school like that. And I said, why? She said the teacher actually got to teach the entire time. And nobody was disruptive. The teacher got to teach. I learned so much. I wish all my classes were like that. And then it was a floodgate of stories from kindergarten all the way up, because some of the kids she had been in school with, this one particular kid, she told me about 12 incidences that had happened over the course of her being in class with him. One involved picking a chair up and throwing it at the teacher, breaking stuff. I mean, I never heard of that, not even for my own kid. And I just feel like those types of things shouldn't happen. And when people say things like that to that woman's daughter, that broke my heart. Like, why didn't she get counseling? Why did her other son have to move out of the class? It's heartbreaking. I gotta go.
My name is Karen Hardigan. I have 2 students in the school district. One is a freshman and one is a senior. I want to start off by saying I love this school district. I love Mr. Mackin. My kids have had great experiences in the district. You know, my son's done really well. My daughter had a bit of a rough start, but the guidance has been spectacular with them. Personally, I do think that we did fail the Pasolinos and the Benties because we would do anything for our kids. I mean, if my son doesn't check in, I start panicking and thinking the worst. So, you know, if our kids are in danger, we want to make sure that they're protected. But I also want to address the parents in that it's our responsibility as well, because you'll see a lot of this stuff on social media. Just once in a while, look at your kids' social media threads. There was a kid that was getting bullied in the middle school, and I saw, like, and it was like kids that I knew that were bullying her, and my daughter didn't want me to say anything. She was like, no, 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 I don't want to be the snitch, you know? And it got so bad that at the point I was like, we have to say something. And I called guidance, and I'm like, oh, I'm sure you're aware of this, but I just wanted to let you know. She's like, nope, this is the first I'm hearing of it. But if any parents had checked their kids' social media, they would have seen it, you know? So, and it actually worked out great. They talked to the person's parents, the child's off of social media. So it actually worked out. But, you know, our kids don't want to be the snitches. They don't, you know, and it's a lot to put that on a 12, 13, 14-year-old. So that's why I think as parents, we have to take some responsibility for, and, you know, I don't want to, like, invade their privacy, but at the same time, if they know that once in a while you're looking, they're going to be careful about what they say. So that's why I think it's, like, all of our responsibility in order to protect our kids.
Thank you.
I know this has been said multiple times, but it bears repeating. The middle school in particular does have an anonymous reporting site right on the main webpage. So if kids do hear of things going on or things they're concerned about, or parents, anybody can go on that. You can report things anonymously, and the guidance people will check into it.
Good evening. I wasn't going to speak. Dawn Lennox. I have 5 in the district. The only thing that I don't think was brought up, and correct me if I'm wrong, but do teachers in all buildings have keys for their door for a lockout?
It's my understanding they do.
So every teacher, so the doors that are being left open in a lockdown?
It's my understanding that for every instructional space they work in, there's a key to lock the door.
No, they don't.
We can
No,
have
they
that
don't.
conversation separately, but
No, they don't. The teachers don't
That's my
have keys to the doors during lockdown. Doors are open.
No,
I'm just
I'm
cons-
sorry to say, but papers.
Doors are open. There's a bunch of teachers that don't have keys. That's why this is what, oh.
So I just wanted to confirm if that was a rumor or if it was true or false. So it's a rumor. So,
I'm sorry, I went to the
so you know-
PTA meeting last
And
week
so
and the
you
board
know,
member, she's
Michelle.
not here.
And so you know, BB last year, we changed all the locks. And every teacher got the key for the lock. Where we did the same in the high school. In all the other schools, they all have keys. And we're switching all the locks going forward for better lock.
I think maybe what people are referring to, and they get, are people that travel to different classrooms. You know, so for instance, if you have a teacher that goes from one classroom to another, they all have keys.
well, I had heard that a couple of the students in high school, they were just, when there was a lockdown, they were just roaming and the doors were open. So I just wanted to.
Probably the teachers didn't close. Or probably there were substitute teachers. Definitely, we don't give to substitute teachers.
So you do not give to substitute teachers? So what happens in that case if there's a lockdown and there's a substitute?
no, I'm sorry, the substitute teachers get keys.
You just said
On the daily basis.
On the day, yes.
Oh, they do?
Correct.
Not permanent.
Not a permanent.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because they don't go to the same classroom.
Each day. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
Enrique.
Lisa Anderson. At the PTA meeting in Panera the other day, you said that we did not fix it and that it was a problem, that we did not have keys, and that Mr. Mackin was having a hard time getting the teachers to come forward because many teachers do not have keys to all of the doors, and that it was, Mr. Mackin couldn't get the teachers to come forward.
That is not completely what I said. What I said.
One nice speech.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you for coming. I've been taking copious notes back there. I'm taking everything that you're saying very seriously. I do like to deal in fact. And I do think.
You introduce yourself?
Yeah. By the way, yeah, thanks, Mr. Mergill. I'm Jim Mackin. I'm a high school principal. Been here a while. I'm just assuming. Probably have to stop doing that as well. There has been a key problem. We audit keys every summer. When teachers check out and they hand in their keys and everything that they have to hand in, we audit keys and make sure that they have keys for the classrooms that they started with and that they hand in what they started with. For as long as I've been in education, keys have been a problem because the master key, to have a master key, it's passed down from teacher to teacher. It's a passing of the guard. Recently, we've had key issues because we have a couple of different key systems in the rooms. There's also, I think, miscommunication about what the key systems look like. So when people say, I don't have a key to my room, that can mean what I've learned is that can mean a couple of things. That can mean I don't have a key to the outdoor lock. I don't have a key that locks my door from the inside because I don't have a mechanism. An intruder lock is what they call it. So any key can lock a door no matter what classroom you're in. So I think you have to define what people are talking about. I recognize this dilemma, and I sent around my security staff and my head custodian. It was disruptive to the day. The teachers were ticked. They were very angry. And I asked the custodian, because he could identify master keys and also identify the key that matched the core in each classroom. And my head security and my custodian did that over the course of the day, made sure everybody had the keys that they were supposed to have, and also took the master keys that they weren't supposed to have. So everybody does have a key in the rooms that they need. Again, the keys that they want versus the keys that they should have is a different argument. So there's a lot of people that think they should have keys to book rooms and supply closets and things because it's a convenience. I don't see convenience as a safety issue. You have keys to the rooms that you teach in. If you need to get something as a matter of convenience, that's very nice, but we don't live in that environment anymore. We live in an environment where, we have to keep things as safe as we can. So that's the key issue.
So that's in the high school, but what about all the other?
I can't answer that. I just wanted to,
so
because
issue here, perhaps is there issues in
can't answer
the other schools?
that, but I just wanted to make sure that
there is no issue yet. There was kind of an issue, so maybe we could just look into that.
We're going to, in our facilities presentation, let's do it there. In our facilities,
I'm Director of Facilities, and I also run the safety committee. So one of the things that Anthony Malini, Director of Facilities. So one of the things that we have been doing, and Barbara can attest to it because she's been to every safety meeting since the beginning of the school year. So there's a big concern, people with locks and keys and doors and hardware and things like that. Everybody has a lock on their door, everybody has a mechanism or a key so they can lock their door. We've been running lockdown drills since the beginning of the school year, and we've had law enforcement come in, and we've had our outside consultant Alteris there present when we're running the lockdowns. They've been going through and making sure that doors are locked, things are transpiring the way they're supposed to be transpiring. When they notify me that there is a problem, or there is an issue with a door, maybe it's broken, maybe the hardware is not working, maybe there's something wrong with something, we order parts, we remedy that, and we get it fixed right away. If someone doesn't have a key, we've got them keys. From my understanding, from going to the safety meetings, everybody has a key. We have representatives from each building at the safety meeting, so we have someone there from Furnace Wood, someone there from Blue Mountain, someone there from the high school, someone there from BB, someone there from Franklin, etc. And every time we've been asking since the beginning of the school year, you can see my minutes, you can see my agenda, we've been asking about locks, keys, and hardware, because this year, just like everybody is aware, there's been a lot of big safety concerns, and we're heightened, and we're just concerned about everything that's going on in the world and our kids and making sure they're safe. So, as far as we know, and I check with the principals and everybody on a regular basis, I don't say daily, but regular basis, to make sure that they do have what they need to do a correct lockdown. If something changes and they let me know, I can fix it.
You have to come up to the mic. Rachel, I hate to do that, but.
Has the PA system in the cafeteria been, we had a lock-in place back in November, where student got hurt, so they held everybody in the cafeteria, but the kids in the cafeteria had no idea because they couldn't hear has that been?
No. There's been a couple things, and I'll let you speak.
So how will that be relayed next time it happens?
So there's been a couple things going on with the PA system, and when we get apprised of their system not functioning properly, we have an outside consultant that comes in, and they come in and they try to remedy the best they can. We are also in the process of changing out the phone system throughout the district. And one of the things that the phone system will be able to do, correct me if I'm wrong, will be the PA, correct? So we are in the process of putting a whole new system throughout the buildings in every single office.
So here we are 3 months later, and if there's a lock in place, the kids in the cafeteria still won't know, or is there like a backup plan?
They will not, they cannot hear clearly on the PA system. They can't.
Yeah, okay. I am sorry, but it is almost 9:30. We will have audience comments again towards the end of the meeting, but we do have to have presentations going forward. And I promise you there will be time at the end of the meeting for you to continue with audience comments. But in lieu of the time factor, we have the facilities presentation
that you should stay for.
Yeah,
the
absolutely,
facilities,
because it ties in
addressing a lot
of these things that we're talking about. So,
Barbara, I'm also willing. I can stay outside, and I'm willing to address
that's
questions.
That's wonderful.
The best
Thank you. We will
stay.
We will stay at the end of the meeting, and for whoever needs to speak, I will allow time then. But we have a superintendent's report. Do you want to?
Yeah, I want to give some dates and let people know what's happening around our district. On March 14th, we talked about it, about how the elementary, middle school, and high school will, to the extent they'll participate in a commemoration service regarding the school shooting in Florida. And this Saturday is Hen Hut Live at 7:30 at the Factory at Charles Point. It's a dynamic fundraiser to support different initiatives in the district, and it's an opportunity where families or really adults can get together and have an adult experience. So find a babysitter and get your tickets online. March 22nd, our music department is having a fundraiser to raise funds for the hurricanes that crippled Texas over the summer. That's at 7:30 p.m. in the high school auditorium. And what's really unique about this is it's our music department performing. Oftentimes they teach and demonstrate, but not always perform, so it'll be a great concert.
Is it just Texas or all of them?
I believe Texas and Florida, Hurricane Harvey.
Yes.
Irma. Harvey and Irma. Yes, Irma that hit Puerto Rico. April 13th, 14th, and 15th, the high school will host the annual spring musical Mary Poppins. There are evening performances. There's a matinee, so get your tickets because those events certainly sell out. Our spring sports season officially came to an end yesterday. Winter sports ended yesterday. Spring sports start in mid-March. So if your children aren't signed up and you want them to run around and run in circles or play lacrosse or run track and field, make sure you get them signed up. Those sign-ups are ongoing. Tomorrow we're meeting with state officials regarding Indian Point. Those are ongoing conversations regarding funding and financing and anything related to Indian Point. We have a meeting with the town of Cortland tomorrow. Tomorrow is March 1st. That officially starts the lobby season in Albany with our elected officials. So the School Boards Association, the School Business Association, the Teachers Association, Superintendents Association, all have set times and opportunities to meet with elected officials and governors, officers from the governor's office to discuss school funding and related issues. And lastly, and I'm not going to put it in order of importance, but perhaps last and most important, yesterday we received notification that Hendrick Hudson High School is a Project Lead the Way Distinguished School for 2017 and 18. Hendrick Hudson High School is one of 340 schools across the country to receive this recognition. It's based on outcomes for student outcomes in Project Lead the Way courses. It's based on the number of Project Lead the Way courses that the high school provides and based on the number of college credits students receive. So that's outstanding news for this board who's made a financial commitment to it, as well as for Mr. Mackin and his staff to provide those opportunities for kids that if they take Project Lead the Way, they graduate with a really unique experience and opportunity to further their academics in STEM-related fields. So we're very proud of that. We'll get more information on it this week.
That's wonderful.
Can I selfishly jump in?
Sure.
You omitted something important.
Oh my goodness.
If you are parents of elementary children,
yes.
we have
Yes.
3 literacy nights this month. One at BV on Monday, March 5th, one at Frank G on the 13th, and one at Furnace Woods on the 26th. It's an opportunity for you to come and learn about how reading and writing has been changing in your students' classroom. We'll do an overview, and then we're very thrilled that our teachers have come forward and we'll do some demonstration lessons for you. So please let your building principal know which night you will be attending. We look forward to having you there and working with you.
Board of Education, I know you'll be very upset, but we're going to skip committee reports. We will have facilities report as part of our presentation, which my
Can we do that
input
first?
and
Yes. We're
Yes.
doing facilities first, right?
yeah, I think given the people that have been generous enough to give up their time to come out tonight, that I think some of their concerns and questions can be alleviated here in some of the things that we're implementing.
Okay, so for a number of years, we have been discussing as a Board of Education community a bond proposal. And what a bond proposal is when the Board of Education asks the community to support essentially borrowing for a capital project. The reason you do it this way and not in your general budget is because you'll go broke trying to raise that amount of tax in 1 year, but it also spreads the borrowing out. It's no different than bonding a project for a school is no different than a mortgage on your house or a car loan. It spreads out your payment and commitment over time, and you're able to support those payments for a longer period of time rather than a shorter period of time. The birth of a project starts with a building condition survey. The building condition survey is mandated by the state of New York that every 5 years the school district needs to have an independent auditor, or in this case an architect or engineer firm, review all of the district's facilities, from ceiling fans to HVAC to carpet to doors and windows and other areas. It's a foundation for a future project. What that means is this independent group completes the building condition survey, files it with the State Education Department in Albany, and if a district ever wants to do a project, the guts of the project or the recommended actions of the project need to be tied back to the building condition survey. Creates a level of expectation and transparency. So our building condition survey that was done in 2005, 2015-16 looked at a lot of different things that are visible to the naked eye and some things that aren't, like HVAC and plumbing and air quality things are not things that you see when you walk into a school or a classroom, but they're there and they need to be upgraded. Building foundation, athletic fields, I'll just name a few of them. Virtually every facility, all facilities need to be identified, need to be assessed in those categories. So what would a typical health and safety recommendation be? You see some pictures here from various facilities. The picture on the bottom left is one of our locker rooms, bottom right is one of the corridors at the middle school, and in the middle is the standard bathroom. So some of the recommendations were to fix doors that weren't fire rated, update classroom sinks, make sure that locker rooms and other spaces are ADA or Americans with Disability Act compliant. And some of our facilities aren't because rules change and regulations change, and it's time for schools to catch up. Health and safety. This includes replacing aged HVAC units, ventilation in spaces, in terms of toilet rooms that currently lack it. We have different code and requirements that we have to meet when we do any upgrades to our facilities. Also, direct digital controls, that's hardwiring in our ceilings and in our floors to make sure that we have internet capability, that our security cameras are connected in, and that we have everything working in terms of our demands on technology. Other health and safety things include lighting, improving the lighting, additional fire alarm notifications. Some of these are very straightforward and somewhat mundane. General building renovations. This includes classroom space. We have talked for a long time as Board of Education about renovating some of our classrooms, particularly middle school and high school science rooms. This also includes renovating auditoriums. Some of you who are here may have participated in a survey that we put out each of the last 2 Novembers, November of 2017 and before that November of 2016, asking the community how they felt about our facilities, asking the community what they would support in terms of a bond. And what came up with great support was renovating classrooms, renovating our auditoriums. We also asked questions around high school track and field. And I say field because I'm not going to commit to turf or sod, but we have dilapidated track in other areas, other outdoor areas in some of our schools that are in dire need of replacement. A 4-letter word in this community, figuratively but also literally, is turf. And this community has struggled with turf and cost and benefit and all of those sort of things. What we do know is we have to replace the track at the high school. It's not as safe as we would prefer. We don't hold as many meets as we prefer, and it's about almost 40 years old. And if we don't improve our facilities through a bond, or if we don't improve them at all, our kids aren't going to be able to use them. It's that simple. 30 years old? 30? Bill?
We were seniors.
Oh, all right.
Class 88.
30 years old, so Class 88 knows this well. They were the first ones running on the track, and if we end up doing a project, we'll make you guys the last ones. You've christened it and put it to bed. The turf field or sod field is an issue, as I said, this community has been battling for years. What we know is that to renovate the track, we're going to dig up the field. I mean, we're talking about excavating, we're talking about backhoes, we're talking about tractors, trucks, all sorts of things. So the question is, what do we replace that with? And we're going to go through an analysis later on in this presentation about the cost-benefit analysis of turf versus grass. All right, so we'll save that for later. I will tell you as a tease, Turf is more expensive up front and cheaper over a 13 and 25-year period. And what Turf also provides is more playability. We don't have to close it down, we don't have routine maintenance, we don't have to put a cover over it, but we'll save that for later in the presentation. So we took all of this into account. We took what the community has been asking us to focus on, classrooms, safety features, we've talked a lot about that tonight, renovating our auditoriums, track, field, whatever that field might be, and increasing safety features in our school district. That includes new windows and doors, replacing windows and doors that are safer, not only from a fire rated standpoint, but glass that may be shatterproof, or purchasing film that goes on glass to make it impenetrable or more difficult to penetrate. We've also talked about in this project, and I'm glad you're all here because we've talked about all this before, so I'm sorry if I'm going quick. We talked about renovating the main foyer areas at the 3 elementary schools and possibly the middle school. We have a number of safety issues and enhancements we'd like to make in those areas to have more of a presence when parents, kids, or strangers enter our building. There's more of a direct presence when you walk in. I think someone said, might have been Jen Kapfer, you get buzzed into the middle school and you can go a lot of different places before you see an adult. Part of our commitment in proposing a bond is to protect some, or to change some of the outlay, the architectural outlay of the building so that we can create a safer environment. We already had the conversation about locks. We're having discussions with companies around using your badge for a lock rather than keys. You heard Mr. Mackin talk about the craziness of trying to find keys, who has keys, who needs keys. All staff in the district have a badge, and that badge also operates as a fob, and that gets them in and out of schools. And depending on where you work or what you do, you have access to 1 school, 2 schools, 5 schools, district office, who knows. That technology can also be replicated inside our 5 schools so that teachers just need a badge with pre-committed access to get in and out of classrooms that they work in, or in and out of common spaces that they choose. So that's an opportunity for us to address this in the bond. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Catalan, but what I will share is that all of these conversations, from a community interest standpoint to the board's commitment and the community's commitment to making sure we have safe and secure facilities, that they're 21st century ready, that we have the most recent and updated technology, we're looking at a bond of around $18.5 million. That's a big number for this community. A couple of years ago, in 2013, we approved a $6.2 million bond for technology upgrades, as well as some routine maintenance, because we still have to do that like we do to our homes. We've got to fix the roof, we've got to patch the driveway, we have to make sure that our schools are buttoned up from a physical plant standpoint. Right? What this team, what this board has been talking about for the better part of 2 months was costing out the price of a bond if we just did auditoriums, classrooms, routine maintenance, track and field. With a lot of the fervor and urgency around school safety, our facilities committee is recommending tonight to the board that we move that number up to $18.5 million to make sure that we're ahead of the curve on any safety, health and safety features for our schools and our kids and our teachers to make sure they're as safe as possible. These things take time. It's not an overnight project. I certainly heard a call tonight on what can we do immediately, tomorrow, so on and so forth. We'll get there, but this is a long-term look at what our schools look like, the opportunities we provide our kids in terms of instructional spaces, in terms of auditoriums, performing arts, and also athletics, but also to make sure that you folks and the ones that aren't here feel a little bit safer and a little more comfortable sending their kids to school. So we're going to hang on to questions till the end.
I just had a question about the number, because you just said 18 with the safety, but it's 18 and a half there without the
18 and a half total, all in, all inclusive. So safety features including windows and doors, technology, safety improvements, renovating main office foyers. The project also calls for renovating some classrooms in terms of line of sight, which is a safety feature. safety mechanism, but we'll get into some of the specifics of that.
Thank you. Good evening. The project cost is, as they said, $18.5 million. But before that, I want to address the question what we're doing now. We have on a yearly basis in our operation budget about $200,000 to do small projects in the district. This can be changing the carpet, changing some locks. That's the way we change the locks in BB. We were fortunate a couple of years ago to save $2.2 million. And we moved it to a reserve called reserve fund for only replacements and fixing our buildings. So, like Joe said, this might be a 3, 4, or 5 year project. But immediately, we're using that money to fix the most important safety issues. We're fixing everything that we can and does not disturb the students now through the summer. And in the summer, that's when we do the big projects. The projects that you need to drill, you need to make noise, you need to do it the whole day. So we believe that this summer we're going to spend a vast amount of money and everything on safety. And today, we're very afraid about shooting. But remember, fires are more common than shootings. So a lot of the money that we're putting here is for fire safety, electric, doors, HV, everything that wires our facilities can be a safety issue. So I can tell you that out of these $80 million, I'll say about $12 million goes direct to safety. So our students will be safer in our buildings. So as you can see, for example, the medical rooms. The medical rooms were built in the 1960s. You can imagine the changes that can happen in those rooms that we only have patched, the different type of work that they do today. They are not as safe as they should be. So we're changing, we're plumbing, everything to make it better instruction on the one hand and safer on the other. For us to be able to do a bond offering, there has to be several steps. The first step happened several months ago, several years ago, when we did the BCS. Then we did 2 surveys to see if the community was interested in doing this bond. And then today is the first time that we're introducing the bond. We need to do several SECRA and several projects with the states for them to allow us to make any changes to build. So that's part of it. The board has to approve the bond, and then we need to go and sell the bond. We need to put it in the newspapers. You are going to be able to vote for the bond the same day as we vote for the budget, May 15th. Thank you. The idea of this bond is that it's not going to increase your taxes. Why? We have several bonds, as you can see here. Today, we have $59 million in debt. But the majority of that debt, about 43 is due between now and 2022. That means, for example, next year, we're going to end up paying a bond of $9 million that we should put out. This year, next year, we are paying $750,000 out of that. That if we decide not to do anything, that will reduce our budget by $714,000. So what we are telling the community is, let's do this bond at no additional cost. There will be, I'm not saying if you reject it, I'm going to show it later, it's going to reduce your taxes. But if you approve it, it's not going to increase your taxes. So if you look at the first four, we're talking about $43 million. That's, and we will start paying the new bond about 2019, 2020. So by then, we have already had the $9 million mature, and we will be a year before the 17.5 million and the 17 million matures. If you have any questions, I'll answer them after I finish. Basically, this is a lot of numbers that no one will understand, but basically what I'm showing in white is the bond profile today. So how much we're paying on a year between now and 2036, every year in payments of debt and interest. The second column, the B column, remember the state today, because our wealth ratio, they pay 10% of any project that we do, and it's passed by the community. So if you look, actually, my payment is $4.5 million in 18-19, but really is 4.054 because I get back from the state the difference between those two numbers. The next two numbers will be the cost of the new bond at 18 million, the blue one. So again, if you look at the first year, is 581, but actually the cost is 523. And then the third yellowish one is the total for the community with what we own now plus the 18 million. And the last one, I'm just showing what will the community be paying extra after paying everything compared to last year, compared to this year, which is the year that we only have our bond profile without the 18.5 million. And if you can see, every year but one is negative. It means that more money we're saving for bonds that are maturing than the cost of the new bond. And there's two reasons for that. First of all, starting in 2020, 2021, our state ratio will increase from 11% today to 31. And number two, for example, the $17.5 million bond, we're paying 4.25% interest rate because interest rates started to go down after I was able to refinance. Under some of the covenants, I couldn't refinance after certain years, and that's when interest rates started coming down. We expect today, and I know that interest rates are going up, but today, if we were to issue the bond, we will be paying 3.25% interest. Obviously, interest rates are going up, and I cannot raise anything now, but I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference. Definitely, we're not going to be in the 4.25. So here was, what if you reject the bond? What will happen? First of all, our facility sooner or later will have to use money from somewhere to repair them, and the state will not give us the 30%. We'll have to put the whole 100%. But leaving that aside, you can see how your taxes will increase. For example, decrease, I'm sorry. If you don't pass a bond in 2019-20, your taxes will decrease by 1.2%. And you look at all the numbers, it goes from 1.7 to 2.2. So those are the numbers that you will see your taxes decrease. And this is before you pay taxes. Remember, this is part of the $10,000 that you don't get. So no flat percentage of the state aid. But I'm not getting into anyone's tax. I'm not an accountant. But anyway, here you can see exactly how much your taxes will be reduced if you decide not to pass the bond. Finally, the big question that always has been in past bond offerings: turf against natural grass. And let me explain how we did this so you can understand. And we're not talking any quantitative issues that our kids will be able to play before or after. This is money. The turf lasts about 13 years. So today, either we'll sow it in the bond, and that will cost $300,000, or we'll put the turf, that will cost $1.5 million. I'm taking into account that in both cases, the state will pay 30%. Then we're looking at natural grass. We need to paint it. We need to seed it. We need to water it. We need to sow it. We need to soil it. We need to put field planks. So 13 years later, also we will need to resow it. At the same time, 13 years later, I need to replace the turf, and my turf will cost $400,000. So that's why I did it for 26 years, because it's 2 replacements against 2 replacements. And you can see the savings of doing the turf will be about $214,000 over 26 years compared to having the natural grass. We've done several studies about the health issues. Since the last time that we discussed this in 2010, there's new type of turfs, organic. Anthony can talk a little bit about it, that are safer and better, and those were the ones that we obviously would put here. But I just want to leave it there. If anyone has any interest in having more feedback about what kind of tour, what does the research says about the healthy and the safe of the tour, please call me, or specifically Anthony, that he did all the research. We'll be happy to talk to you and to help you understand what it is what does it mean to have the turf. So that's it for me.
How long does the bond work? How long does the bond last if you borrow the 17.5 or 18 million?
20 years.
20 years?
Yeah, that's
so,
what.
So you pay for it for 20 years, but you have to replace it in 13.
Just the top, just the carpet, not
yeah, the
everything.
400. Yes, yes. That's why if you look, turf, the first one is construction cost today, and then you see the other one is 300. And the way I'm going to pay for that is from the savings of the 13 years in the operating cost.
your list of all your bonds?
Yes.
You seem to
You
have a lot of
can't,
bonds.
yeah, whoa. You have to please come up if you're gonna ask any questions.
So you have it, organized out.
You can't.
So
can't hear you.
$250 million over the next 20 years, you're never going to be taking another bond out of them? Aren't you going to anticipate that other things will be repaired?
We don't know. We anticipate
Enrique, I'm sorry. Yeah, can you just come up, because we can't hear your question.
We are on TV and they cannot hear you. That's the reason. It's not
We can't hear the question.
We can't hear the question, so it's not fair to the rest of us.
My question was, on the list of bonds that you have, it seems that you have numerous bonds, which most, municipalities or schools do. But in your forecasting, you're only forecasting one bond at $18.5 million for the next 20 years to take you through 2037. You're obviously going to have more bonds.
Well, other ones will be maturing. Like in the first.
But you could have put in there because you're really kind of skewing your numbers, not showing that you're going to be taking other bonds out.
Well, we don't know what the need is yet.
No, I mean, but we can. It's called projections.
Correct. Well, thank you.
Maybe we could talk about, because I know a lot of people are concerned about what's going on, about the things that we're actually considering for our front foyers and our windows and our doors, etc. Like, right? You're concerned about that, right?
There's certain things that we can discuss in public forum. There's certain safety measures that we can't discuss, only because we don't want things to get out there regarding what our safety ideas are going to be for protecting the students and the staff that are inside the building. So, yes, we are looking at fortifying our entranceways. We are looking at fortifying our doorways to classrooms. We are looking at improving our hardware. But specifically, the measures that we're going to take have to be kind of like guarded. We're not really shouldn't speak about them. I spoke to my safety consultant about it today, and he said try to talk about it in broad terms of what you're going to be doing, only because you don't want to get too much information out there or speculation out there. But we are going to be working with consultants. We are going to be discussing with other school districts in the area, in Westchester County and other areas, and to see what they do. And by working with our consultant Alteris, they work in many districts throughout Westchester, so they'll have their hand on that pulse as well as how other school districts are fortifying their buildings as well. So we'll get an idea of what's working, what's not working, what measures are viable, what measures are not. And there are school districts that have taken precautions and have done things, and they can speak to that of what's working and what's not working to help us when we go about and we try to do what we want to do.
In your safety plan, is there also considerations for kids when they're on the playground and school bus safety? Because everything is about guns and bulletproof glass, in the school and getting only in the school. What about when they're vulnerable at other points of time?
Yes. So again, there's only so many things we can obviously do, but we do drill that as well, and we do have Alteris meet with the monitors that are on the playground and discuss what their alternatives are. They do have radios with them on the outside when they go outside. If a group goes outside to recess, they take radios with them. So if anything's going on inside the building, they can radio to them. If individuals are outside the building and they see something, they might see just a coyote in the woods if they're out towards Furnace Woods or a mountain or something, and they can radio in and they can say, look, there's a coyote out here, there's something out here, call somebody, see if we can get something resolved, etc. So we do try to address that as well. And then on the buses, we do run some drills on buses that we're mandated to do. And I was just speaking with the transportation supervisor this morning, Ms. Gilio, in regards to adding a module. We do training with the bus drivers over the course of the year. We just had it in February, but we're looking into adding a module with them upcoming where we would talk about safety in terms of a student or somebody bringing some sort of weapon onto the buses and what we would do in terms of that. We've had training in terms of what we can do if we see someone standing there, like a parent or something, they're irate or something like that. We have protocols with that parents aren't allowed on the bus. Sometimes parents get irate because they just want to give little Joey or Johnny their lunchbox or something like that, but they're not allowed to come on the bus. beyond us. So we'll take the package and we'll deliver it for them or something like that. And there's only so much the bus driver can do because he can't really leave his seat for that long of a period of time. So there's all these different things, and yes, to answer your question.
And also, so you know, every single one of our buses has camera, and every single bus has a walkie-talkie.
Yeah, there's radios on the buses that have radio back. So if we have someone that passes the bus, the red lights, things like that, we radio in, they call the police department right away, we report that incident. If there's something going on the bus, the bus driver, if he tries to find the safest spot that he can to pull over, he pulls over, radios and let us know that something's going on. If we have to pull a video, sometimes we do it because the bus driver comes back and says you have to pull the video. Sometimes we'll get a report from the principal of the building, and they'll be like, look, I heard something happened on the bus yesterday. Can you pull the video, review it, and send it over to me? So the Director of Transportation does that as well. So download the video, she'll check it all out, vet it, and then she'll send it over.
My question is, one thing I had suggested to my daughter is putting blinds up in the windows so that a shooter wouldn't be able to look in. And she said at Furnace Woods, they had done that after the Sandy Hook shooting, but I don't remember seeing them at other schools. So why would it be implemented in one school and not others?
Well, there's only certain things we can do with that, and working with our consultant right now, the state legislation right now is they don't want anything on the windows in terms of a permanent piece of paper or anything like that. So we're not allowed to do that because you're supposed to have that vision panel so you can see what's going on inside the classroom on a daily basis. Shades, when we're talking about shades, they have to be specific shades. You can't have just any type of shade because then we go into the fire rating of the door and the fire rating of the exit light. So the likelihood of it happening, we just never know, but that's why you're not allowed to put 2 feet on each side of the door. You can't have any type of cardboard or any type of paper because that's an egress. So now if you put a shade on there, the shade catches fire, if something happens, it creates a problem. So there's always been this big debate going back and forth with the shade. The other thing is the state, the troopers, they don't like shades as well. They don't like closing the lights in the room as well because when they have to come into that room, they have to go in, they want to be able to see if there's anything going on in the room when they're opening up that door to come out of the lockdown. Now, if every room has a shade on it, they can't see what's going on in that room. They don't know if something's transpiring behind that closed door. They could be walking into a potentially hazardous situation. You don't like the lights off because now their eyes are used to the bright hallways, and now they're going into a dark room, and their eyes have to refocus again, going into a darker room. So they don't like doing that. I know it's a lot of information, but it's crazy. And then one of the things, so we're looking at like rooms like Furnace Woods, and the primary concern there is line of sight. Joe mentioned that terminology before. So what we're looking to do is either build like a little knee wall or do something, put a file cabinet or something there so the kids can hide out of the line of sight. We're looking to do that in other buildings as well. Jim Mackin has gone through numerous lockdowns, and you know the first thing that the troopers come in when they look at is they try to look inside the windows and try to see what's what, and if the kids can get out of the line of sight. We are looking at doing something with the windows and trying to obstruct the view and whatnot. So we are
I also want to tell you, being very proactive, Mr. Huckrider has arranged with our safety consultants to meet at each of the buildings. So there will be roundtable discussions on the safety protocols and different things that we are implementing.
One of the things that's in the hopper right now is trying, and the PTAs to reach out to us to see if we can get someone to come. So we're going to have a consultant and try to coordinate something. We can come to a PTA meeting, one of them comes to the PTA meeting to talk to the parents and see what their concerns are and try to tell them what we're doing in terms of training, what's working, what's not been working, and where we're going in the future, and kind of like an idea of what's going on.
Because like I'm president of the high school, president of the high school PTSA, and honestly we get very few parents that come to our meetings, so it would be really helpful to know that well in advance so that we can try to publicize.
Absolutely. That will be publicized.
That just happened today that we got all the PTAs meetings. Today we had a meeting with
we're missing the
high school. I couldn't find a date for your next meeting. Oh, okay.
So let's talk like that. We can tell our consultants and we'll advertise it and
Maybe we can blend it in where we have like the middle school, high school together, and maybe the three elementary together. So it's a little kind of like the same block. And
Each building is different though, so I guess, you know, it's probably better to keep it.
We're trying to, that's our idea, to do it in each of the buildings.
In March. So this is going to be our first week of April, and I don't think parents are going to want to wait till April. But we have March, we have the nursing.
At the elementary.
At the elementary school, that's happening during their PTA meeting. So unfortunately, I don't think it would be beneficial to do it during the elementary school PTA
Maybe
meetings.
all the literacy nights?
Yes, each building is doing one during their PTA meeting.
We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
We will do it, we promise. Okay, Enrique, do you want to finish up, please, because in the interest...
We did.
Okay.
We're done.
Any other questions?
I know.
Thank you.
John, you don't have to tell me. I do know what I'm doing here. Okay, is that it? Anthony, you're through. Enrique, you were through. Do any members of the board have any questions?
I'm going to throw a wrench in it.
Okay.
I think as we're talking about the budgeting season, we should consider bringing back an SRO. Same.
You want to do
Or a
one?
couple. Huh?
Okay.
So the process of that is school districts contract with law enforcement agencies, whether it be the county or state police in our case. And it's not as immediate as we think. We would have a conversation with them. They have to do an RFP because this is an outside contracted position. The board would have to approve that, and then the county police or the state police would go find an officer who's trained, ready, qualified, those sort of things. So, you know, I can't guarantee or commit to what that timeline would be, but whenever a school has whenever a district has a school resource officer, that becomes their beat, that becomes their assignment. So I'm pretty sure that those agencies are just as lean as any other public agency, and they don't have, you know, substitutes or you know, people on the bench, so to speak. So we can start that conversation with those law enforcement agencies if the board's interested. The last time we put a number around this, and this was a couple of years ago, but we were around $130,000 to $150,000 per officer, because the contract is for the district to pay their salary and benefits, and they become essentially an employee at the school full time. And current budget projections, just so we all understand, when we started the budget in January, did not include that expense. It doesn't mean we can't maybe move some expenses around and try to make that happen for next year. But it's a conversation. We can start that conversation if you wish.
We actually have started it, but we can continue having it, so.
Joe, you got my email from the other day, right, with the SROs and big push?
Yes, so there's a discussion at the state level on the state's response to this, because a number of school advocacy groups, the Board of Education Association, the PTAs, the superintendent's group, are asking the governor essentially, you know, what your ideas are. And he is floating the idea of assigning state troopers to schools at no cost. A long time ago, there was an opportunity, there was grant money available for school districts to work with different New York State agencies to curb the cost of school resource officers. That's why you saw them in almost every school. And then that's why you saw them go away in almost every school, because the funding dried up and it became an expectation on the school district to fund that when it wasn't necessarily already budgeted for. Some schools have kept their school resource officers. We went a different route. We knew that we were able to hire a slew of trained, many of which are retired police officers as security guards in the high school. We have about 6, I think we're up to 6 now. We can hire and employ those 6 individuals at almost the cost of one full-time police officer. If you've been to any of our events, concerts, games, meetings that are late at night, you'll see those gentlemen patrolling the building, the outside, the hallways. You see them providing supervision services at those events. So that was a decision that the board made a number of years ago. We felt we got more bang for our buck going down the security officer road, with the caveat that they are trained and or retired law enforcement agents.
But they don't carry guns.
But they cannot carry.
If you want to let it be legislators and senators or some people as a PTA as a group, you can do that. I have a form letter too that if you want to see something, I can reach out to Joe or Enrique or see how they want to handle that. Maybe we can get in touch with PTA presidents and maybe we can send them something and then maybe they can talk to their constituents and parents and see if they want to, send notice that parents, this is something we're trying. And see what happens. If they reinstate the program.
Okay, I think because of the time being 10:15 at night, I think that I am going to shelve our presentations on instruction and from our special ed presentation, and we will schedule that for another time. I hope nobody here was for those presentations. We did feel it was more important for all of you to have your say, and we want you to know that we definitely have listened. We have one more opportunity for you to comment if anybody feels that they have anything else that they wish to comment on.
Going back to what I spoke about, Michelle had asked the question, who pays for pensions and lifetime health benefits that are due the employees? And it was answered that the state funds both. My understanding is the district funds the lifetime health benefits.
But not everybody has lifetime health benefits.
No, let me be clear. In the employee retirement system or the teacher retirement system, every employee, depending on when they started and in their capacity, full-time, part-time, there's a sliding scale that they pay a percentage of their annual salary to the state pension system.
Yes.
All right. And depending on when they started, that number moves. It's a percentage of their salary for 5 years, 10 years, 15. It all depends on what tier they are. You probably have heard a tier 2, a tier 4, a tier 8. Each of those tiers essentially are a group of years of when employees started in the system. And each tier has different criteria for the employee to contribute and for the employer to contribute. All right. So the reason that how the pension system accrues its money is when you're working and not retired, you're putting into it, and that money is accruing interest, so on and so forth.
But when an employee is terminated, as opposed to being given the right to resign, if you're both employees keep their pension, you can't touch their pension.
Sure.
But their health benefits can be touched. So if they're both funded by the state, why is it that you can't touch their pension? You can touch their health
are not funded by the state.
Health insurance is
well, that's what you were just saying.
No. The retiree, their pension, their benefit, their retiree paycheck is different than health insurance. Health insurance operates the same on the same sort of conceptual framework that retirement does, where employees pay a certain percentage of the premium, depending on what they do, what their function is, if they're in a union or not, what union they're in, and the Board of Education provides the balance of that as a benefit. So again,
it is funded by the taxpayers.
By the taxpayer and the employee.
Okay, so that was, I think it was either you didn't understand the question before, it was answered wrong, but that's what I wanted to make clear. That if you resign, you're continuing to pay the health benefits.
No,
if
you are not retired, if you resign.
If you resign, you don't keep your health benefits?
No.
If you have 10 years in?
Or 20.
That's not my understanding.
No, then that's a problem.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
So you're saying if you resign or if you're terminated, both ways, you lose your health benefits?
Yes. I don't know who told you otherwise. That's the way it has been here for 40 years.
Okay. So then what's the benefit of resigning over why?
Why talk to a lawyer? Because I'm just going to tell you very simple. Some people decide to resign. It's for them. It's up to them.
Well, you know what I'm speaking of the incident of the two dirty drug tests
I'm
and
not
him being
going to
allowed
talk
to
about
resign.
We're not talking about personnel.
Well, that's what I'm referring to. When,
Then
there has to be a
cannot
benefit to
comment.
resigning.
I cannot comment.
Well, of course you can. I wouldn't expect you to.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Dawn Wilkinson, I've got 2 kids in the district. I just wanted to say one small thing about lockdown drills. My middle schooler has said that they've had quite a few lockdown drills during the first 2 periods of the day, like homeroom and one-on-one. And she said to me, Mom, what do we do if something happens at lunchtime? Because it's a big open area and they haven't been told what to do. Is this?
Yes, it was asked before, so we're going to.
So good.
We're going to address
to tell
that.
her that I brought it up, that you know. Because I couldn't answer her. I was like, well, you hide.
We can't either.
I can't tell you where. So, but something else was said that at a Blue Mountain Middle School PTA meeting, which was that to some extent you're beholden on the law enforcement as to when they can actually come to the school to conduct a lockdown drill. So, I mean, I don't know what you do about that because you can't strong arm them to come when you need them to come. But
we work with them.
Huh? Sorry?
We work with them.
Oh, so thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you all sincerely for coming out. We have to continue with another executive session. I know board members are going to be very happy about this. Can I please have a motion? We're going back into exec session very quickly. So can I please have a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting? Thank you. Second? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.